Your cooking is awful. You're old now, retired, and jobless. Honestly, there's no reason for me to stay married to you anymore. I've been a great husband, but it's time we get divorced. Right away. No alimony, just a fair 50-50th split of everything we own, including your $200,000 in retirement savings. See how generous I am. When my retirement benefits finally came in, my husband Liam hit me with the idea of divorce. He said it was because I wasn't a good wife, but after decades of marriage, I knew the real reason. He had never cared about our family life. I glanced at Liam. He thought I'd be devastated by his sudden demand, but instead he looked pleased with himself. It was as if he was proud of how cruel he could be, like he had won some twisted game. His betrayal was truly disgusting. But I had no reason to panic. If this was the path he wanted, I could handle it calmly and make sure he faced the consequences. If we're divorcing, we need to sort out our finances, right? Fine. Let's get everything settled so you can get out of my life for good. Oh, but before that, I reached out and handed him something. It was my way of showing him the hell he brought upon himself. I'm just an ordinary woman, 60 years old this year. I recently retired after working my entire career. Back when I was young, it wasn't common for women to attend university, but I wanted to understand the world and enjoy my youth. So I decided to study economics. Through my studies, I learned how the world works and how it connects to everyday life. My dream had been to open my own restaurant, but in the end, I chose the security of a government job. Liam, my husband, was a classmate in college. Though we studied the same subject, we barely interacted at first. By junior year, we ended up in the same club, spending time together during events and working on our theses. Over time, we grew closer, but we didn't start dating until after graduation. I used to go out for drinks with Liam and other friends from university. We'd laugh, share stories, and complain about work. Out of everyone, Liam and I got along the best. Sometimes we'd meet up just the two of us for drinks. I didn't dislike him. In fact, I enjoy his company a lot. Eventually, one thing led to another, and we naturally started dating. On weekends, we usually hung out at each other's houses, relaxing and enjoying lazy days. I'd cook simple meals, and we'd eat together, or we'd grab something from a fast food place. Occasionally, we'd treat ourselves to a nice restaurant. During summer and winter holidays, we made it a tradition to travel, either abroad or to different parts of the country. After 5 years of dating, we decided to get married. I was about to turn 30, and it felt like the right time. We both thought it was a good moment to start a family. 2 years into our marriage, our daughter, Lily, was born. Pregnancy and childbirth were completely new experiences for me, and I had so many worries. Liam, on the other hand, seemed pretty carefree about it all. It annoyed me, but I stayed quiet and dealt with it. During that time, my sister, Emily, was a big part of my life. After our parents passed away around the time I graduated from university, Emily and I became each other's main support. She had started working right after high school, and I was already employed, so we managed to get by financially. We both deeply loved our parents and leaned on each other during those tough times. Emily lived just a 10-minute walk from me. Anytime one of us needed help, the other was there immediately. She wasn't married and wasn't dating anyone, mostly because of her bad luck with men in the past. Her first boyfriend was a smooth-talking cheater who got her into financial trouble. He borrowed money in her name and spent it recklessly. Since then, she's been wary of relationships and avoided men altogether. When I told her I was pregnant and feeling overwhelmed, Emily understood completely. She came over every day to help with housework and check on me. Liam, being old-fashioned, refused to do chores. I was juggling a job, housework, and horrible morning sickness. I barely survived until I could take maternity leave. Thanks to Emily's help, I made it through and delivered Lily safely. Liam was there for the birth, and we shared that joyful moment. But after that, he didn't want anything to do with taking care of the baby. Instead, he started complaining. Dinner was late, the baby's crying was keeping him up, and he was constantly irritable. On those tough days, Emily stepped in again. After work, she'd come over to help with the house, and she adored Lily. Emily was also good at handling Liam when he was in a bad mood. "Oh, Liam, what are you even talking about? Just relax and have a drink," she'd say, turning the mood around. And somehow, thanks to her, I managed to keep everything together. Balancing housework and childcare was exhausting, but we held on to our tradition of traveling in the summer and winter. That became my motivation to push through the hard times. Thankfully, Lily grew up healthy. She worked hard and got into the university she dreamed of. She studied Spanish there and developed a love for traveling abroad. She wanted a career that would allow her to follow her passion and keep improving her skills after graduation. Lily eventually became a translator for a trading company. She handled complex documents and did her job so well that I couldn't help but feel proud. She was independent now, and as I approached retirement, I was looking forward to starting a new chapter in my life. I'd saved enough money and would be receiving a big sum from my retirement fund. With more free time ahead, I wanted to try new things. But during that time, I noticed something strange. Liam started coming home very late. Normally, he'd be home about an hour after work, but lately he wasn't walking through the door until 10 or 11 p.m. He was also eating out more often than usual. I've been getting better opportunities at work, so I've had to entertain clients, he explained one night. It's just a final push before I retire. His explanation didn't quite sit right with me. Why would the company give such a big responsibility to someone about to retire? Still, he seemed happy about it, so I didn't question him further. Instead, I brought it up with Emily when she visited. Liam's been coming home late a lot recently. He says he's taking clients out, but do you think he might be having an affair? He's turning 60 soon, and it just feels odd. Emily laughed it off. Come on, don't be ridiculous. He's probably just doing what he says, giving it one last effort before retirement. Besides, he doesn't exactly seem like he has the energy for an affair, does he? You'd know that better than anyone. I wanted to believe her. I tried to push my doubts aside and focus on the future I imagined for us. A peaceful life together, enjoying retirement and spending time like we used to. Then one day, I got a call from Lily. Mom, you like a good drink, right? I found this stylish bar recently. Want to go together? Of course, and it's my treat, so don't worry about anything. Wow, you sound so fancy. All right, I'll let you spoil me. Let's go. Her grown-up attitude warmed my heart. I hadn't spent much time with her lately, so I decided to take the chance. A few days later, we met up. The bar was exactly the kind of trendy spot Lily liked. Chic, cozy, and warm. It served craft beers, wines, and an impressive mix of dishes inspired by American and French cuisine. You always find such great places. Is this where all your money goes? I teased. She laughed. Not at all. I only come to places like this for special occasions, like tonight. It's not as pricey as it looks. We joked around and caught up, enjoying a rare mother-daughter outing. She told me she'd recently started dating someone from her company, a reliable, hard-working guy. Hearing her talk about her life and relationships made me emotional. I was so proud of how far she'd come. But that happy moment was shattered by what I saw next. When I went to the restroom, I noticed Liam sitting at the bar counter. Beside him was Emily. I froze, trying to make sense of it. Liam was supposed to be entertaining a client that night. What was he doing here with my sister? At first, I thought it might just be a coincidence, but then I noticed their body language. They were sitting far too close, like a couple. Liam had his arm around Emily's waist, and the look on his face reminded me of how he used to look at me when we were dating. A wave of nostalgia hit me, mixed with a painful tightness in my chest. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Even if Liam was drunk, what I saw felt like too much. Emily seemed happy, though. I was upset, but I managed to calm myself down and return to the table. Lily could tell something was off from the look on my face. Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay? I sighed, then told her everything I had seen. Well, I guess he's just tired of me. Emily's younger, prettier, and smarter. This is what happens when you've been together for almost 30 years. Lily's eyes went wide. Oh my God. He's been having an affair with her? That's crazy. Don't blame yourself, Mom. The problem isn't with the person being cheated on, it's the person who cheats. I'm here for you, and I won't let him get away with this. Let's make him regret it. Her words gave me the strength to face the truth, and I decided to confront Liam. Following her advice, I began secretly taking pictures of him and Emily together as proof. 3 months later, I officially retired. It was a mix of emotions, bittersweet because I had worked there for so many years, but also exciting because I was ready to start a new chapter. I spent my days doing housework and exploring the things I had always wanted to try. Liam, who was the same age as me, still had 6 months to go before retirement. "Hey, how much do you have in your retirement fund?" he asked me one day after I retired. $200,000. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. Just curious about how much I'll get when I retire in 6 months. I could tell he had something planned, but I acted like I didn't notice. Then 2 months later, Liam suddenly changed his attitude. "We're getting a divorce." "Excuse me? What's going on?" He sighed and said, "I've been thinking about it for a long time. Your cooking's terrible. It never tasted good. I used to think you were pretty, but now that you're older, you've gotten really haggard. Honestly, I'm embarrassed to be seen with you. And you lack empathy. That's a huge issue for a woman, don't you think? I don't know how I've put up with you for all this time. I've reached my limit, and I want a divorce." I wasn't surprised by his words. "Well, if you felt like this for so long, then I agree. Let's get a divorce. I can't be with someone who despises me." I agreed immediately, and he grinned like he had won something. "Thank you for all your hard work. Now let's talk about finances. I'm taking your retirement fund. It's shared property." "I see. Then I'll make sure to ask for alimony," I said calmly. "Don't pretend you don't know anything," he shot back. "I don't know what you're talking about," I replied. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You still insist you don't know about this," he pressed. I placed the evidence, the photos of his affair, on the table. "This is from 2 months ago when you said you were out with clients, but you were actually with Emily. After I retired, I hired a private investigator to gather evidence. It turns out you were meeting her almost every day. No wonder she stopped coming around and stopped contacting me. From now on, I'll be staying with Lily until the divorce is finalized. You and Emily can live together now. I'm not coming back. Goodbye." I packed my bags and went straight to Lily's place. I explained everything to her, and she welcomed me warmly. "Looks like you got everything sorted out. Good job, Mom. Make yourself at home until you find your own place." "Thank you. I'll stay here for now. If your boyfriend comes over, just let me know, and I'll step out." I filed for divorce from Liam and also filed a civil claim against Emily with the lawyer I'd already spoken to. I asked him to make the alimony higher than usual for a mature divorce. Liam and Emily were shocked when they saw the amount and immediately called me in a panic. "Hey, you're awful. What is this amount?" I asked my lawyer, and he said it's fair. There's no way to hide your affair, so please don't complain. "Emily's with you, right?" "I don't know how long you two have been together, but I'm angry with her too. She was the only family I had left. You both better pay every penny. I'll leave the rest to my lawyer." "Wait. I already used your retirement money to buy the car. What am I supposed to do now?" "Why should I care? You bought it, so you pay for it. If you don't have the money, return it or get a loan yourself." I hung up on him after that. Then I reported the divorce to his boss, whom I knew well because he'd come over for dinner a few times. I didn't want Liam spreading lies about me at work. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to let you know that Liam and I are getting a divorce," I said. "What?" He never mentioned it. "What happened?" "He was having an affair with my sister. On top of that, he tried to take my retirement money. Can you believe it? This is serious. I'll report it to my superiors." After that, things didn't go as Liam expected. The divorce was finalized, but I was curious about what happened with the car. Still, I didn't have time to worry about it, so I let it go. A month after Liam retired, he showed up at Lily's house. Since her place was cozy and I couldn't find an apartment I liked, I was still living there. "I'm sorry, can we get back together? Paying alimony is hard, and I'm struggling to live a normal life," he said, looking desperate. He went on about how difficult things had been for him at work since the affair came to light. He felt embarrassed, and his retirement fund had been significantly reduced because of the evidence against him. Of course, he also had to give up on buying a car. He hadn't saved much money since he had been depending on me for everything, and his Social Security wasn't enough to live comfortably. When he had to pay a huge alimony, both he and Emily broke up. They struggled to pay the amount. Emily had been counting on my retirement money too and had bought things on credit. Now, with her debts piling up, she was in financial trouble. Liam was left alone, destined for a lonely second life. "You're just after my money, right?" Do you even realize you've been talking only about yourself since you got here? I don't care about you anymore. You cheated on me and tried to take my money. Karma caught up with you. Now leave, I said. Wait. I'm so sorry. You're right, he begged, getting on his knees. His apology looked fake, like something he was doing to get sympathy at work too. Lily finally spoke up after listening to all of this. Do you know how hard life was for Mom? She worked and took care of everything alone. You never helped her, and when she tried to talk to you, you got mad. I always thought you were awful, and now you're asking her to get back together just because you need money? How much lower can you go? I never want to see you again, you traitor. Hearing this from his own daughter was too much for him to handle. Now I'm completely free from Liam, and I'm enjoying a peaceful second life. I found the perfect apartment for myself, and I've been hosting home parties with my kids, friends, and coworkers. Thanks to my retirement fund and the alimony, most of my financial worries are gone, and I live comfortably without stressing about money. My relationship with Lily has gotten better. She recently introduced me to her boyfriend, and he's a great guy, just like I thought he would be. I trust him to take care of her. They even take me on trips when they have free time. Lily says she wants to make up for all the years I took care of her, and I know she just wants me to feel loved and supported. The only thing I hope for now is to see my grandchildren someday, but I'm willing to wait patiently. Now that I'm settled, I'm finally starting to follow my dream from when I was younger, running my own little cafe. My second life is just beginning.
In the busy city of Sydney, Australia, where tall buildings sparkled in the sunlight and everything moved fast, Jasmine's days felt slow. At 25, Jasmine worked hard as a cleaner but struggled to get by. Her days were filled with the noise of cleaning tools and city traffic, but she stayed hopeful despite her tough life. Each day, she cleaned offices and hotels carefully, dreaming of a better life for herself and her family. One afternoon, while Jasmine was cleaning the floors of a fancy office building in Sydney's business district, a tall, well-dressed man named Liam caught her attention. Liam, 28 and wealthy, had been walking through the building's lobby and noticed Jasmine. He was intrigued not by her looks, but by how dedicated she was to her work. He admired her focus and the kindness she showed despite her situation. Feeling sympathetic, Liam walked up to Jasmine. "Excuse me," he said, sounding genuinely concerned. "I've been watching you work, and you do a great job. Here, take this." He gave her a banknote that was more than enough to cover a day's work. Jasmine looked up, surprised and confused by the unexpected gift. "Thank you, but you really don't have to," Jasmine said, surprised. Liam smiled and shook his head. "It's the least I can do. It's a tough world, and people should help each other when they can." As he left, Jasmine held the money tightly, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief. It wasn't just the money that meant a lot to her, but the kindness from someone who seemed to live a life of luxury. It reminded her that compassion still exists, even among the rich. Back at his fancy mansion, Liam's stepfather, Marcus, a wealthy and calculating man in his late 50s, was noticing Liam's recent acts of charity. Marcus, who was always thinking about their family's status, saw these acts as a threat. He thought kindness might be a weakness that could harm their reputation. One evening, Marcus called Liam to his study. The room was filled with expensive art and old furniture. Marcus sat back in his chair, looking serious. "Liam, I've heard about your recent charity work," Marcus said, sounding smooth but disapproving. "You might not realize, but this could hurt our family's image. We have a reputation to maintain." Liam, used to his stepfather's controlling ways, was surprised by how serious Marcus was. "I'm just trying to help people," he said firmly. "Isn't that a good thing?" Marcus's face grew stern. "Not if it harms our reputation. You need to understand how important this is." Liam was confused but didn't have time to ask more. Marcus continued, "I think you need to learn about responsibility and image. I've set up something to help you understand." The next day, Jasmine got an unexpected visit from Marcus. He arrived at her small apartment, Looking out of place among the modest surroundings, with a careful smile, he made Jasmine an offer that seemed too good to be true. "Jasmine," he began, "I'm here to offer you a chance," Marcus said. "My stepson Liam wants to help people like you, to avoid any more problems. We've come up with a plan. If you agree to marry Liam, you'll have a life of comfort and wealth." Jasmine was shocked. "Marry him? But why? I don't even know him." Marcus's smile didn't change. "It's a way to secure your future and help your community. The money you'll get could really make a difference in your life and others." Jasmine was torn. The chance to improve her life and help her family was tempting, but marrying a stranger felt wrong. Still, the possibility of making a big impact with the money made her think. As days passed, Jasmine felt overwhelmed by her conflicting emotions. She didn't realize that Marcus's offer was part of a bigger plan to manipulate and control. The real purpose of Marcus's scheme was hidden, setting the stage for future conflicts and secrets. Meanwhile, Liam's life continued to be shaped by Marcus's influence. Liam didn't know the full extent of his stepfather's plans. As the wedding day got closer, tension built up. Jasmine's choice would soon reveal a web of betrayal and deceit that neither she nor Liam could have expected. With Sydney's skyline shining in the sunlight, Jasmine found herself at a difficult decision. Marcus's proposal left her confused. Marrying a wealthy man like Liam was tempting, but the way the offer was made felt wrong. Marcus seemed more interested in controlling her than in being kind. Jasmine spent the next few days feeling overwhelmed. Trying to make sense of the situation, Jasmine was torn between a comfortable life and the moral issues of the arrangement. One evening, while cleaning a fancy restaurant in Sydney, she saw Marcus talking privately with an older woman. Jasmine noticed the woman's brooch, which seemed oddly familiar. She tried to ignore it and focused on her work, but the brooch kept coming back to her mind. The next day, Jasmine went to a local market and overheard a conversation about a wealthy estate and a woman named Evelyn Howard. The talk included a sad story of loss and betrayal. The name Howard caught her attention, and she remembered the brooch from the restaurant. Curious, she decided to look into it. Jasmine found old newspaper articles about Evelyn Howard. They described Evelyn as a kind and generous woman who was well known in Sydney's high society. After her death, her wealth had gone to her husband, Marcus. Determined to find out more, Jasmine went to the local archives. There, she found more information about Evelyn Howard's life and her tragic death. What shocked Jasmine the most was learning about a missing infant daughter who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. Jasmine realized with horror that the missing child was her. As Jasmine put the pieces together, she discovered Marcus's cruel actions. He had married Evelyn, taken her wealth, and then abandoned Jasmine when Evelyn died. Marcus had deliberately erased Jasmine's existence to keep control of the family's money. This was a crushing blow, confirming her worst fears about Marcus and the true nature of his proposal. The wedding day came with a mix of excitement and fear. The fancy venue, filled with lavish decorations, was a stark contrast to Jasmine's modest background. Guests in elegant outfits buzzed with excitement, unaware of the hidden drama. Liam, not knowing the true reasons behind the marriage arrangement, was getting ready for the ceremony. Despite his doubts and the growing tension, he tried to stay positive, hoping that marrying Jasmine might lead to something good. He had come to appreciate Jasmine's strength and kindness and wished their marriage could bring about some positive change. Dressed in a beautiful wedding gown, Jasmine felt both nervous and determined as she walked down the aisle. She glanced at Marcus, whose smug look did nothing to calm her. As the ceremony began, Jasmine braced herself for the worst. She knew Marcus was planning to reveal her past to embarrass her and Liam, but she was ready to act. With newfound courage, Jasmine stepped forward and interrupted the ceremony. "Stop! I have something to say," she declared. The guests whispered in confusion as Jasmine took a deep breath. "When I was a child, Marcus abandoned me. My mother, Evelyn Howard, died years ago." Marcus took her money and left me in poverty." The room was stunned. Liam looked shocked, and Marcus's face went pale. The image Marcus had carefully built started to fall apart. Jasmine continued, her voice steady despite shaking hands. "Marcus tricked me into this marriage not out of kindness, but for his own gain. I am the rightful heir to Evelyn Howard's estate, not just a poor cleaner." The guests were stunned into silence, glancing between Jasmine and Marcus. Liam, now fully aware of Marcus's betrayal, felt a mix of anger and shock. He realized that his stepfather had set up the entire situation to satisfy his own greedy desires. Marcus's calm demeanor crumbled as he faced the truth. Jasmine's accusations and the guests' shock left him trapped. His deceit and manipulation were exposed for everyone to see. As the guests started to understand what had happened, Jasmine's strength and determination became clear. She went from being a pawn in Marcus's scheme to a symbol of truth and justice. What was supposed to be a display of Marcus's power turned into a reveal of his darkest secrets. The once fancy wedding hall was now filled with confusion and commotion. The elegant decorations seemed out of place against the drama unfolding. Guests whispered among themselves, their faces showing a mix of shock and curiosity. Liam stood frozen, trying to process the shocking news Jasmine had just shared. Marcus, who had once been confident in his power, now found himself in a crisis he couldn't control. As Jasmine's words echoed through the hall, Liam's shock turned into intense anger. He turned to Marcus, his voice quiet but full of rage. "Is it true, Marcus? Did you really abandon Jasmine and steal her mother's fortune?" Marcus, now trapped and desperate, tried to stay calm. "Liam, this is all a misunderstanding. Jasmine is trying to mess things up." Liam's anger flared. "I've seen enough. It's clear you've been deceitful from the beginning. The truth is out, and you need to explain yourself to everyone here." The guests whispered among themselves, their interest peaked. The festive mood was replaced with tension and anticipation. Jasmine stood firm, her heart racing but her determination strong. She had revealed Marcus's deceit, but the fight was far from over. Marcus's face showed panic as he tried to save his reputation. "This is a smear campaign. Jasmine is trying to deceive everyone." Before he could say more, the police arrived, called by worried guests who had seen Marcus's deceit. The officers, informed about what had happened, began to investigate. They questioned Marcus, Jasmine, and the stunned guests. With Liam by her side, Jasmine explained the truth about her past and Marcus's betrayal. She shared details about Marcus's schemes and her research into Evelyn Howard's history, which supported her claims. The police took notes and promised to look into everything carefully. As the investigation continued, it became clear that Marcus had not only manipulated the situation but had also been involved in fraud. Jasmine's evidence confirmed her identity as Evelyn Howard's daughter and showed that Marcus had falsely claimed her inheritance. The days after the wedding were chaotic. Marcus faced growing financial and legal problems. Meanwhile, Jasmine and Liam found themselves unexpectedly working together. Jasmine and Liam's shared experience and growing respect for each other turned their forced marriage into something genuine. Liam, feeling guilty for being part of Marcus's scheme, was deeply affected by Jasmine's struggles. He promised to help her seek justice. Jasmine's bravery and determination inspired many. She continued to fight for those who had been wronged and used her situation to highlight injustices. Her transformation from a struggling cleaner to a strong advocate for justice showed her courage. As the legal battles against Marcus heated up, Jasmine and Liam worked closely together. They spent long hours going through documents, meeting with lawyers, and preparing for court. Their teamwork showed their dedication to finding the truth and seeking justice. Even with the growing evidence against him, Marcus refused to give up. He kept trying to deceive and discredit Jasmine, but with increasing public support and solid legal evidence, it was becoming harder for him to maintain his false image. The turning point came when the court showed all the evidence of Marcus's crimes. It was clear he was guilty. and his attempts to hide his actions failed. The judge, impressed by Jasmine's courage and the solid proof of Marcus's wrongdoing, sentenced him to a long prison term and ordered him to return the stolen money. Jasmine and Liam's hard-fought victory was a testament to their strength and persistence. Going through this struggle had made their bond stronger. After the trial, Jasmine and Liam decided to use their experience for good. They started a foundation to help people in need, focusing on supporting and providing opportunities for those who are less fortunate. Their aim was to make a positive impact in the community and prevent others from facing similar injustices. In the courtroom, everyone was silent as the verdict was read. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his fraud and ordered to repay the stolen money. His proud facade was shattered, and he had to face the consequences of his greed and deceit. He had underestimated Jasmine and Liam's resolve, and now he was paying the price. As Marcus was taken away in handcuffs, the media went wild with coverage. News channels all over Sydney reported on the fall of the wealthy businessman and the surprising events that led to his downfall. Jasmine and Liam found themselves in the public eye, becoming symbols of bravery and justice. Their story inspired many people. Jasmine, now recognized as the rightful owner of Evelyn Howard's estate, faced the challenge of adjusting to her new life. Going from a struggling cleaner to inheriting a large fortune was overwhelming, but she was determined to use her wealth for good. With Liam's help, she started working on the promises she had made. Liam, having seen Marcus's manipulation up close, felt a strong sense of duty. His initial act of kindness had sparked the events that led to Marcus's downfall, and he wanted to make sure their work had a lasting impact. Together with Jasmine, he set up a foundation in Sydney to support, educate, and help those in need. The foundation's goal was to assist the underprivileged and give a helping hand to those who had been forgotten by society. Jasmine and Liam put in a lot of hard work to set up programs that helped with various needs, like giving financial aid, education, and job training. They used their platform to push for social justice and draw attention to the struggles faced by underserved communities. Jasmine's story, once full of hardship and betrayal, had become a symbol of hope and change. Her bravery and determination turned her into an advocate for positive change, and her efforts were really making a difference in many people's lives. She found satisfaction in using her experiences to help others and make a real impact. Liam also discovered a new purpose. By working with the foundation, he was able to use his wealth and influence to support meaningful causes. The experience changed him from a wealthy young man who was disconnected from others' struggles into someone who truly cared about making a difference. My name is Rachel. I'm 32, and life had always been an intricate balance of love, work, and family. My husband, Daniel, and I had been married for 8 years, and while our marriage wasn't perfect, I believed we had a strong partnership, or so I thought. Daniel had a 14-year-old son, Jack, from his previous marriage. When I met Jack, he was a shy, polite boy who slowly warmed up to me over time. I treated him like my own child, helping with his homework, attending his soccer games, and even creating his favorite meals on the weekends. Despite my efforts, there were moments when Jack would remind me I wasn't his real mom. I brushed it off, chalking it up to teenage angst. Things began to change when Daniel's sister, Clara, moved back to our city. Clara and I had always been cordial, but there was an undercurrent of tension. She was protective of Daniel and had never fully accepted me into the family. One evening, Clara came over for dinner. As we sat around the table, she brought up Jack. Jack's been telling me he feels uncomfortable here. Rachel, Clara said, her tone dripping with concern. I was taken aback. Uncomfortable? Jack, is that true? Jack hesitated. his eyes darting toward Clara. I don't know. Sometimes. Clara jumped in. See? Kids pick up on things. Rachel, maybe you're too strict with him. I felt blindsided. I had always been fair and loving toward Jack. This accusation felt unwarranted, but Daniel sat there silently, not defending me. A week later, Clara hosted a family gathering. I noticed the sideways glances and hushed whispers. Daniel's aunt approached me and said, "Rachel, I hope you're not too hard on Jack. He's just a child." The pieces began to fall into place. Clara had been spreading rumors about me mistreating Jack. That night, I confronted Daniel. "Why didn't you defend me when Clara accused me of making Jack uncomfortable?" I asked. He sighed. "Rachel, Jack's been acting distant lately. Maybe Clara has a point." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "I've done nothing but care for Jack as if he were my own. Why are you doubting me?" Daniel didn't respond, and I felt the foundation of our marriage begin to crack. One morning, as I was preparing breakfast, I overheard Jack on the phone. "She's so fake," he whispered. "Clara said I should tell Dad how unhappy I am. Maybe they'll split up." I froze. The boy I had loved and cared for was plotting against me. Manipulated by Clara, the betrayal cut deep. Later that day, Daniel came home early. "We need to talk," he said, his expression grave. "About what?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Jack told me he doesn't feel safe here." Clara agrees. "Maybe it's best if you take a break from the house for a while." I was speechless. "You want me to leave my own home? Based on lies?" Daniel avoided my gaze. "It's not permanent. Just until things settle down." Packing my bags felt like a nightmare. As I closed the door behind me, I vowed this wouldn't be the end of my story. Sitting in my car, a small suitcase beside me, I stared at my phone. My mind raced between fury and heartbreak. My home had been taken from me, not by an external force, but by the people I trusted most. I checked into a modest motel across town. The room was quiet, but my thoughts were loud. Clara's influence over Daniel and Jack had turned my life upside down. I needed answers. The next morning, I called my best friend, Mia. She listened intently as I recounted everything that had happened. "This is ridiculous, Rachel," Mia fumed. "You've been nothing but good to that boy. Clara's jealousy has been simmering for years, and now she's using Jack to drive a wedge between you and Daniel." "I feel so powerless," I admitted. Mia's voice grew firm. "You're not powerless. You need to fight back. Start by gathering proof that you've done nothing wrong." Her words sparked something in me. I wasn't the villain Clara painted me to be. It was time to uncover the truth. Over the next few days, I began piecing together Clara's influence. I reached out to Jack's teachers, coaches, and even his friends' parents. Each conversation painted a similar picture. I was a caring stepmother who always put Jack's needs first. "I can't believe they're accusing you of mistreatment," one parent said. "Jack always speaks highly of you." But the most revealing moment came when I decided to visit Clara's neighbor, Mrs. Benson, a nosy but kind older woman. She had a habit of keeping tabs on everyone in the neighborhood. "Oh, Clara?" Mrs. Benson chuckled when I mentioned her name. "She's always meddling. I overheard her telling her friend about a plan to protect Jack from you." Sounded like nonsense to me. Clara's manipulation wasn't just a hunch, it was real. I decided to meet Jack after school. He seemed surprised to see me but agreed to talk. "Jack, I need to ask you something," I said gently. "Do you really feel unsafe with me? Or is someone telling you to say that?" Jack looked uncomfortable, his gaze shifting away. I don't know. Clara said you might be trying to replace my mom." My heart ached. "Jack, I would never try to replace your mom. I care about you because you're part of our family. Clara is wrong to put these ideas in your head." He didn't respond. but his silence spoke volumes. Clara's influence wasn't just about me, it was about creating doubt in Jack's mind. Armed with the evidence I had gathered, I decided to confront Daniel. I invited him to meet me at a coffee shop. "Rachel, what is this about?" he asked, his tone weary. I placed a stack of papers on the table, testimonies from teachers, neighbors, and even screenshots of Clara's social media posts subtly undermining me. "This is about the lies that have destroyed our home," I said firmly. Daniel hesitated as he flipped through the pages. "I didn't know," he began. "Because you didn't want to know," I interrupted. "You let Clara manipulate you and Jack, and you didn't even question it." The weight of my words seemed to hit him. "I'll talk to Clara," he said. "Talking isn't enough," I said, my voice breaking. "You need to decide where your loyalty lies, with the truth or with Clara's lies." The days following my confrontation with Daniel were nerve-wracking. I had laid everything bare, but his inaction spoke volumes. He avoided my calls, and Jack's texts grew sporadic. It felt like I was screaming into a void. But I wasn't ready to give up. Clara's lies couldn't go unchecked. If Daniel wouldn't stand up for me, I'd fight for myself. One afternoon, Mia called, her voice laced with urgency. "Rachel, you won't believe what I found," she said. "Clara's been bragging about her success to her friends. She thinks she's won." Mia sent me screenshots of Clara's messages in a private group chat. Her words were venomous. I told Daniel exactly what he needed to hear. "Rachel will be out for good soon. Jack finally sees her for who she is." I made sure of that. My blood boiled. Clara wasn't just meddling, she was orchestrating an all-out campaign to ruin me. I decided it was time to confront Clara directly. I drove to her house, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and determination. She opened the door, her expression smug. "Rachel," she said coolly, "what brings you here?" "Cut the act, Clara," I snapped. "I know what you've been doing. You've poisoned Jack against me and manipulated Daniel. And now, I have proof." Clara's smile faltered for a moment before she crossed her arms. "Proof? Of what?" "I'm just protecting my nephew from someone who clearly doesn't belong in his life." Her words stung, but I held my ground. "This isn't about Jack. This is about your jealousy and your inability to let go of control. You're hurting him more than you're helping." Clara's face turned red with anger. "Get off my property," she hissed. "You have no idea what you're talking about." But I did. And now, I had the evidence to back it up. After leaving Clara's house, I reached out to Jack's therapist, Dr. Harris. "I've been hesitant to intervene," Dr. Harris admitted, "but it's clear Jack is caught in the middle of a toxic situation. He's confused and being influenced by conflicting narratives." Dr. Harris agreed to facilitate a family session, including Clara. It was a long shot, but I hoped it would force her to face the damage she had caused. The session was tense from the start. Clara arrived with an air of superiority, while Daniel looked uncomfortable. Jack sat quietly, avoiding my gaze. Dr. Harris began gently. "We're here to create a space for honesty and healing. Let's start by discussing Jack's feelings." Jack hesitated before speaking. "I don't know what to think," he said. "Clara says one thing, but..." I remember when Rachel helped me with my school project and took me to the park when I was sad. My heart swelled at his words, but Clara quickly cut in. "Jack, don't forget how she's tried to replace your mother." "Enough, Clara," I said, my voice firm. "This isn't about replacing anyone. It's about creating a family where everyone feels safe and loved." Dr. Harris turned to Clara. "Your influence on Jack is undeniable, but it's important to consider how your actions might be impacting him negatively." For the first time, Clara looked uncertain. The session ended with no clear resolution, but the cracks in Clara's facade were starting to show. Later that evening, Daniel called me. "I've been blind," He admitted, "Clara's been manipulating all of us. I should have stood up for you." I wanted to believe him, but trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. Actions speak louder than words. "Daniel," I said, "if you want to fix this, you need to show me, and Jack, that you're committed to the truth." The next day, Jack came to see me. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he said, tears in his eyes. "I didn't know what to believe, but I know you've always cared about me." I hugged him tightly. "All I've ever wanted is for you to be happy and safe." As for Clara, her influence began to wane. Daniel set firm boundaries, and Jack started therapy on his own to process everything. Life didn't immediately return to normal after the family therapy session, but it felt like a fog was lifting. For the first time in months, I could see a path forward, not just for me, but for all of us. Clara's manipulations didn't go unnoticed after the session. Daniel started addressing her behavior directly, finally acknowledging how her meddling had hurt our family. He limited her visits with Jack and made it clear that her interference was no longer welcome. "Jack needs stability," he told her firmly during a follow-up meeting facilitated by Dr. Harris. "Your intentions might have been good, but your actions have caused nothing but harm. From now on, Rachel and I are making decisions for Jack, together." Clara was livid, but her protests fell on deaf ears. The evidence of her manipulations, coupled with Jack's growing awareness of the truth, left her with little room to argue. Jack and I slowly rebuilt our bond. It wasn't easy, trust takes time to restore, but we found joy in the small moments. Movie nights, trips to the park, and quiet conversations about his favorite books became the foundation of our renewed relationship. Daniel worked hard to make amends, too. He attended therapy sessions with Jack and me, where we discussed everything from his initial doubts to the importance of standing united as a family. "I let fear cloud my judgment," Daniel admitted during one session, "but I'm ready to do the work to rebuild what I've broken." Months later, our family looked different, but stronger. Clara no longer had the influence she once wielded, and Jack had flourished with the consistency and love he deserved. One sunny Saturday, as we sat in the backyard, Jack turned to me with a shy smile. "Rachel, thank you for not giving up on me." I blinked back tears. "I'll never give up on you, Jack. We're family, no matter what." Daniel reached for my hand. "This is just the beginning for us," he said. And he was right. The road had been rough, but we had emerged on the other side, together.
The crystal champagne glasses clinked as my stepmother, Diana, raised her third toast of the evening. To my darling husband's retirement, she proclaimed, her designer dress sparkling under the ballroom lights, and to selling this tired old company for something more exciting. I watched my father's face fall slightly, though he tried to hide it behind a smile. Chen Manufacturing had been his life's work, built from nothing over 30 years. Now, at his own retirement party, he was watching his trophy wife of 5 years plan its dismantling. But Diana wasn't done. Her eyes found me across the crowded room, glittering with malice. "Of course, some people thought they'd inherit this company," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. Poor little Alexandra, thinking Daddy would hand over a multi-million-dollar business to someone who can't even keep a relationship longer than 6 months. The room grew uncomfortably quiet. Several board members shifted awkwardly, while others pretended to be fascinated by their drinks. My father just stared at his shoes, saying nothing, as usual. "It's for the best, really," Diana continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Running a company requires maturity, experience, a proper family image." She patted her perfectly flat stomach meaningfully, a reminder of her recent announcement that she was trying to give my father a real heir. I felt my cheeks burn, but kept my face neutral. Let her have her moment. She had no idea what was coming. "Would you like to say something, Alexandra?" Diana asked sweetly. Perhaps congratulate your father on his retirement and his wise decision about the company's future. I stood slowly, smoothing my black blazer. At 28, I was young for a CFO, but I earned every step up the corporate ladder. Not that Diana knew that. She thought I was just another middle manager kept around out of my father's guilt after my mother's death. Actually, I said, my voice clear and steady, I do have something to say. Diana's smirk widened as I walked to the center of the room. She probably expected tears, pleading, maybe even a scene. Instead, I pulled out a thick envelope from my briefcase. 6 months ago, I began addressing the whole room. Chen Manufacturing underwent a quiet restructuring. The board approved it unanimously. I glanced at several board members who nodded slightly. My father transferred majority ownership to a new holding company. Diana's smirk faltered slightly. My father finally looked up, confusion crossing his face. The holding company is called MHW Enterprises, I continued, enjoying the way Diana's perfectly made-up face scrunched in confusion. MHW stands for Mary Louise Wong, my mother's name. Now Diana's champagne glass was shaking slightly. What are you talking about? She demanded. I opened the envelope and began laying out documents on the nearest table. These papers show that I own 67% of Chen Manufacturing through MHW Enterprises. My father retains 30% and the remaining 3% is divided among key employees. The room erupted in chaos. Diana lunged for the papers, her expensive manicure scratching at the legal documents as if she could make them disappear. This is impossible, she shrieked. James, tell her this is impossible. But my father was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in years. It's all legal, Diana, he said quietly. Alexandra earned this. She's been practically running the company for the past 2 years while I've been distracted. He looked at me apologetically. But, Diana sputtered, her face turning an alarming shade of red beneath her makeup. We had plans. The house in the Hamptons, the yacht club membership. About that, I said, pulling out another document. As majority owner, I've been reviewing all company expenses, including the rather generous consulting fees being paid to your brother's fake marketing firm, and the business trips that somehow always ended up at luxury spas. Diana went pale. You wouldn't dare. I already have. The board has approved a full audit. The police are very interested in some of the more creative accounting you and your brother arranged. James, Diana whirled on my father. Are you going to let her do this to me, your wife? My father stood straighter than I'd seen him stand since my mother died. My late wife, Mary, helped me build this company, he said firmly. She made me promise it would go to our daughter when the time was right. Alexandra has proven herself more than capable. And you, he shook his head sadly, you proved yourself too, just not in the way you intended. Diana's carefully constructed world was crumbling. Her designer purse fell open as she grabbed for her phone, spilling its contents across the floor. Among them was a small USB drive that I recognized, one that had gone missing from my father's office months ago, containing proprietary company designs. Looking for a buyer for our trade secrets? I asked quietly, picking up the drive. That would explain all those lunch meetings with our competitors. Diana's face contorted with rage. She raised her hand as if to slap me, but my father caught her wrist. Security will escort you out, I said calmly. Your personal belongings will be shipped to you, after they're checked for any other company property, of course. And Diana? I smiled sweetly, channeling her own fake sympathy. Don't worry about the prenup. It has a lovely clause about corporate espionage. As security led a screaming Diana away, the room buzzed with excitement. Board members came to congratulate me. Employees who'd suffered under Diana's reign looked relieved, and my father pulled me into a tight hug. I'm so sorry, Alex, he whispered. I've been such a fool. Your mother would be so proud of you. I hugged him back, breathing in the familiar scent of his aftershave. I know, Dad. I know. But our moment of reconciliation was interrupted by an urgent call. Diana's brother had been caught trying to delete files from the company servers, and something told me this was just the beginning of the storm. I touched my mother's old wedding ring, which I wore on a chain around my neck. Ready for this, Dad? He squeezed my shoulder. Lead the way, CEO. As we walked to the elevator, I could still hear Diana's shrieks from the lobby, but I wasn't worried. I've learned from the best, my mother's business acumen, my father's innovation, and yes, even Diana's cutthroat ambition. They'd all taught me valuable lessons. Now it was time to show them exactly what those lessons had created. The morning after the retirement party, I arrived at Chen Manufacturing earlier than usual. The sun hadn't even risen, but I found my father already in his office, sorting through years of memories. Couldn't sleep either? I asked, helping him pack a framed photo of him and Mom at the company's grand opening. Been thinking about your mother, he said softly. She always said you had her business instincts. Watch out for that girl, she'd tell me. She'll outshine us both someday. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus, our head of its security. Ms. Chen, we have a situation. Multiple attempts to access our servers from unauthorized locations. And you need to see this. Within minutes, I was staring at my computer screen in disbelief. Someone had leaked confidential company emails to our biggest competitors. But these weren't just any emails. They were carefully selected to make it look like Chen Manufacturing had been engaging in corporate espionage. Diana, I muttered. She's trying to trigger an industry investigation. That's not all, Marcus said grimly. She's also leaked evidence suggesting your takeover was illegal. The press is already picking up the story. Right on cue, my phone exploded with notifications. Tech Harris in hostile takeover scandal, read one headline. Family drama threatens industry giant, declared another. Dad lips stricken. Alex, I'm so sorry. If I hadn't brought Diana into our lives. No, Dad, I cut him off. This isn't your fault. But I know whose fault it is. I pressed the intercom. Janet, call an emergency board meeting. And get me Victoria Chen on the line. Your cousin the federal prosecutor? Dad asked, surprised. I smiled grimly. Diana wanted to play dirty. Time to show her what that really means. The next few hours were chaos. Diana had gone on a morning news show, playing the part of the concerned wife perfectly. I just want to protect my husband's legacy, she said tearfully. Alexandra's hostile takeover has devastated him. And now with these allegations of corporate espionage. But Diana had made one crucial mistake. In her rush to destroy me, she'd used the stolen USB drive to access company files, leaving a clear digital trail. Got her, Marcus announced triumphantly. Every unauthorized access, every leaked document, it all traces back to her brother's IP address. And he grinned. We found something else. Emails between Diana and our biggest competitor, dating back months before she married your father. The pieces clicked into place. She targeted Dad from the beginning, I realized. The whole marriage was a corporate raid. The oldest trick in the book, Dad said quietly, and I fell for it completely. Just then, my cousin Victoria called back. After hearing the situation, she was silent for a moment. You know, she said finally, we've been investigating Diana's brother's firm for months. Tax fraud, money laundering. But we could never prove where the money was coming from. This could be exactly what we need. Do it, I said firmly. The next day, as Diana was preparing for another TV interview to slander me, federal agents raided her brother's office. By evening, both siblings were in custody, and the truth was splashed across every business news channel. Corporate Rahid Daraidi, CEO's wife arrested in manufacturing espionage scandal. Family feud reveals years-long corporate conspiracy. Young CEO saves family company from hidden takeover. But the real satisfaction came when we found Diana's prenup violation clause was just the tip of the iceberg. The federal investigation revealed offshore accounts, shell companies, and a pattern of targeting wealthy business owners for marriage scams. 7 other victims, Victoria told me. All wealthy men, all with valuable companies. You and your father were supposed to be number 8. In the end, Diana and her brother faced federal charges for corporate espionage, fraud, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming. But before they were led away, I visited Diana in custody. How? She demanded, her designer outfit replaced by an orange jumpsuit. How did you know what I was planning? I pulled out an old photo, my mother at my age, standing proudly in front of Chen Manufacturing, because my mother dealt with people like you all the time. She taught me to spot the vultures circling our company. That's why she made Dad promise to train me properly to protect her legacy. I leaned closer. You never had a chance, Diana. You were playing checkers. I was playing chess. 3 months later, Chen Manufacturing was stronger than ever. Our stock price had soared after the scandal, as clients appreciated how we'd handled the crisis. Dad was truly retired now, traveling the world and sending me postcards from places Mom had always wanted to visit. As for me, I hung Mom's photo in my office, the CEO's office, right next to the latest company achievement, innovation in leadership. Alexandra Chen named youngest CEO of the year. But my favorite moment came during a charity gala when I overheard two society women gossiping. Did you hear about James Chen's daughter? The one who exposed that gold diggers conspiracy. They say she's twice as brilliant as her mother was, and 3 times as ruthless when crossed. I smiled, touching Mom's ring around my neck. They had no idea. In business, as in life, the best revenge isn't serving it cold. It's building something so strong that no one dares to try destroying it again. Dad called that evening from Greece. Your mother would be so proud, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Not just of the company, but of who you've become. Looking out over the city from my office window, I thought about everything, the lessons, the loss, the victories. I learned from the best, I replied. Both of you. After all, that's what real family legacy is about. Not the money or the company, but the strength to protect what matters, the wisdom to spot true from false, and the courage to fight for what's yours. Deanna had wanted to play games with our company. Instead, she'd helped make me exactly the CEO Chen Manufacturing needed, one who could spot a threat from a mile away and handle it with the perfect mix of grace and steel, just like Mom would have done. Late at night, my 9-year-old grandson showed up at our doorstep unexpectedly. I rushed to open the door and found him barefoot, with blood oozing from his toes. He was tightly holding the hand of his 4-year-old sister, whose face was streaked with tears. "Did you two really walk here all by yourselves?" I asked in disbelief. They nodded, and I quickly ushered them inside. However, when my husband woke up, he was furious. "Absolutely not," he yelled, his terrifying expression making the grandchildren burst into tears. I was bewildered. Surely they could have stayed for just one night. But then, I couldn't believe what my husband did next. "My name is Margaret. I'm a 63-year-old homemaker living with my husband Patrick, who is 2 years older than me. He worked as a high school teacher until he retired at 60. We have 2 children who are married and independent. Our daughter Laura lives in a nearby apartment, while our son Richard lives in the neighboring town. Richard's wife, Victoria, is stunningly beautiful, with translucent white skin and big eyes that make anyone falter under her gaze. She's an ideal daughter-in-law as long as she remains silent. However, she has a sharp tongue. Everyone wonders why a woman of my caliber would marry a man like him, she often boasts. Are you saying Richard isn't up to your standard? I once asked. Well, he works for a top-tier company and earns a decent income, but let's be honest, he's not that good-looking. But I'm not that picky, so he's lucky, I guess. I felt very angry hearing her speak ill of my son. Who does she think she is? I wanted to say something, but I held my tongue to avoid a confrontation. However, my husband couldn't remain silent. Richard sure married quite an impressive wife, didn't he? He remarked sarcastically. Victoria seemed unfazed and smirked dismissively. Richard, in response, could only manage a wry smile. Victoria is too good for me. Seeing this, I imagined my kind-hearted son must be facing some challenges in his marriage. Despite their differences, they had a child together. Daniel, our first grandchild, resembled his mother, with a remarkably beautiful face, yet inherited his father's kind personality. A perfect blend of both parents' best qualities. I always looked forward to Richard bringing Daniel over to our house. Victoria rarely visited, which might have been for the best. 5 years later, we welcomed a granddaughter, Emily. She was an adorable girl with fair skin, chubby cheeks, and round eyes. However, when I visited my son's home to celebrate her birth, Victoria disdainfully glared at the newborn. Daniel takes after me and is beautiful, but why is this one so chubby and ugly? Who does she even resemble? She's not cute at all. You're a mother. Don't say such things. She's perfectly cute just as she is, I retorted. I can say whatever I want about my own child. Are you trying to start trouble with me? I won't lose to an old hag like you. As my husband heard this exchange beside me, his expression changed. I could tell he was about to shout in my defense, so I quickly intervened. Instead, it was our son who raised his voice in anger. Victoria, enough. Mom and Dad came here to celebrate. There's a limit to how rude you can be. Oh, how unusual for you to stand up to me, she sneered, glaring sharply at Richard, as if ready to strike. I quickly relented. I'm sorry, Victoria. You've just given birth, and it's a stressful time. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize. Please forgive me. Humph, exactly. You shouldn't have said anything. You could have just sent a gift instead of coming all the way here, Victoria replied, her demeanor consistently lacking manners. I couldn't say anything further. Because of incidents like these, we grew distant. Despite this, Richard continued to bring Daniel and Emily over regularly, which made us happy. However, there were still some concerns on my mind. Daniel was bright and talkative, but Emily, even at ages 3 and 4, showed hardly any signs of speaking. Furthermore, her once fair skin had turned extremely dark from sunburn, and her hands were rough and dry. When I asked Richard about Emily's condition, he said, Victoria claims Emily loves playing in the garden. But the state of our granddaughter's skin was still extremely concerning. Then one day, our family was struck by tragedy. Richard suddenly passed away. He fell from the stairs of a pedestrian bridge during his commute. Though he was rushed to the hospital and received intensive treatment, he didn't make it. I was in such shock that I could hardly stand. Richard, you poor thing. It must have been painful, I murmured as tears streamed down my face. Daniel cried uncontrollably, shouting, Daddy, Daddy, what's wrong? Wake up, meanwhile. Emily stood expressionless, biting her lip. Victoria, without shedding a tear, continued to fiddle with her phone. Looking back, it was a peculiar scene, but at that moment, I was too overwhelmed with grief to notice anything else. My husband received Richard's old, worn-out bag from the paramedics, which had been found beneath the pedestrian bridge. It was the bag I had bought him when he first started working. He'd been saving and working hard for his family, and thinking about this made everything even harder to bear. The wake and funeral were mainly organized by our daughter's husband and were carried out smoothly. I spent the entire time in a daze at home. Then, the night after the funeral, the intercom rang. Wondering what was happening, I looked at the camera and saw Daniel's face, biting his lip. I hurriedly opened the door and let him in. Holding back his tears, Daniel managed to speak in a shaky voice. Mom told us to leave. Can we stay just for tonight? My grandson was barefoot and blood was oozing from his toes. Did you two walk here all by yourselves? I asked, horrified. The grandchildren nodded, but it was a 10-minute drive from the neighboring town. While 9-year-old Daniel might manage the walk, Emily was only 4 years old. Besides, it was the middle of the night. They must have been terrified. As I let them into the living room, my husband awoke. I consulted my husband about Daniel's request to stay just for the night. Grandpa, we'll leave tomorrow. Please? Daniel pleaded. Absolutely not, my husband replied, his brow furrowed with worry. Upon seeing his stern expression, the grandchildren burst into tears, and I was wide-eyed with surprise. Can't we at least let them stay for one night? I began to plead, but then my husband hugged the children tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. Even during our son's funeral, he had held back tears. We had been married for 30 years, yet this was the first time I had seen him cry like this. Don't say just for today. Stay here forever, poor things, he said through his tears. His words revealed the depth of his feelings, and I couldn't stop crying either. Later, I asked the grandchildren what had happened, and what they shared was shocking. Victoria, who was supposed to be a homemaker, was often out during the day, leaving the children home alone. Even when she was home, she would frequently scold and roughly push Emily around for various reasons. Whenever Emily cried, Victoria would shout angrily, "Shut up. Be quiet. You're annoying." Over time, Emily learned to cry silently without making a sound. Daniel said he was often scolded too when he tried to defend his younger sister. He felt sorry for Emily, who didn't have the option of escaping their mother's behavior by going to school like he did. Emily wasn't allowed to attend kindergarten. Apparently, while her mother was around, Emily would go outside to weed the garden every day. This was her way to avoid being scolded and perhaps earn some praise from Victoria. This explained why her skin was deeply tanned and her hands were rough. Emily's inability to speak might stem from a fear of being scolded. Thinking about this filled me with a sense of helplessness. That evening, Victoria had apparently told them that guests were coming and ordered them to go outside. Daniel managed to put on his shoes, but Emily couldn't make it in time and was left barefoot. Victoria quickly locked the front door behind them. Daniel then put his shoes on Emily's feet and held her hand as they walked to our house to seek help. "What a terrible thing to do," I said, shaking my head. "Unbelievable." I tried calling my daughter-in-law several times but couldn't reach her. Since it was late, I decided to sleep with my grandchildren that night. However, early in the morning, Daniel woke me up. "Grandma, I'm sorry for waking you up," he said. "Emily said she saw Dad in her dream." "Huh? Did she?" "Yes." Dad told Emily to look inside the bag. I was taken aback by what he said, but looking at Daniel's serious expression, I started to wonder if there was something more to it. I woke up my husband and told him what Daniel had said. Still groggy, my husband was skeptical at first, but when he checked our son's bag, he exclaimed in surprise, "No way. This is outrageous. I can't forgive this." Filled with anger, we decided to take action. We quickly called our eldest daughter, Laura, who lives nearby, and asked her to come over to take care of the grandchildren. Meanwhile, my husband and I rushed to our son's house and rang the doorbell repeatedly, but no one answered. We continued to ring the doorbell persistently until my daughter-in-law finally appeared in her pajamas, looking disheveled with her collar open. "Geez, so noisy. Who the hell is it?" she snapped. At that moment, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a young man with brown hair crossing the back of the room, completely naked. I knew it. However, as soon as my daughter-in-law realized it was us, she widened her eyes and quickly shut the door. "It's so rude of you to come here suddenly. Go home," she shouted aggressively from behind the door. "We have something urgent to discuss. Please open the door," I insisted. "I can't open it right now," she replied. Reluctantly, I opened the door with the key. Inside my son's bag, I found shocking evidence. As I rummaged through it, the young man from earlier exclaimed, "Oh no, run." He hurriedly dressed and fled from the house. At the entrance, Victoria stood defiantly, glaring at me and my husband without a trace of remorse. "What the heck are you doing here? Are you already cheating on your husband the day after he passed away? Don't be ridiculous." "Oh, he's just a gas repairman," she said, trying to dismiss my accusation. "Huh, so gas repairmen these days work without clothes on," I replied sarcastically. Victoria noticed my sarcasm and clicked her tongue in annoyance. She may have a beautiful face, but her ugly character shows through in her expression. "Richard is gone now, and I'm done with you both. You have no right to say anything. Just leave." At that moment, my husband, his face flushed red with anger, deliberately asked her, "I can't see the grandchildren. Where are they?" He pretended to search around the house. Victoria seemed momentarily at a loss for words, but quickly started shouting angrily at me. "They went to a friend's house. What's wrong with that?" "Stop lying. Were you not worried when a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old were gone all night? Are you even a mother?" "Huh? How do you know about that?" "They walked all the way to our house late at night." As I told this to her, she looked puzzled and astonished, then shamelessly responded with a brazen attitude, "Our daughter isn't cute at all, and the son I raised lovingly rebels against me. I don't need those brats. You can take them, but give me money. I want $100,000. It's not much, right?" She truly was the worst kind of woman. I felt boiling anger at the thought that my son and grandchildren had suffered because of such a woman. "Too bad you can't spend money behind bars. I've recorded our entire conversation," I said, revealing my phone. "Huh, you're so naive. I'll be released soon enough just for being a little harsh with the children." "It's not just about the children. You do realize that taking someone's life is a serious crime, don't you? And there's evidence." Actually, Richard's diary was in the bag. From Victoria's frequent outings, he suspected she was having an affair. On top of that, there was a report from a detective Richard had hired to investigate. According to it, his wife was indeed cheating with a young man she had met at a pub, the same man who fled from the house. Additionally, the diary mentioned, "I've been feeling my life is in danger. It seems Richard had experienced several incidents where he narrowly avoided accidents, such as almost being hit by a car while walking or nearly being pushed onto train tracks while on a platform. He suspected his wife was targeting him and had taken precautions and was preparing for divorce. That might prove my affair, but it doesn't prove I killed Richard. It's just the ramblings of old people. The police have more important things to do. Can you still say that after hearing this? I argued. My husband appeared holding a surveillance camera he had found. The day before Richard passed away, he had installed a surveillance camera in the living room, as noted in his diary. Upon playing the recording, we heard a conversation between Victoria and the young man. It went well this time. I pushed your husband hard down the stairs. Thank you. Now we'll get a hefty life insurance payout. Victoria turned pale, her lips trembling uncontrollably. I had just said that as a joke. How far can you go with your lies? I'll bring all the evidence to the police and request a reinvestigation. Your affair partner might spill everything about you during questioning. Oh, by the way, Laura mentioned something. The place where Richard fell is a busy pedestrian bridge, and many cars nowadays have cameras installed. Laura suggested spreading the word on social media to see if there were any witnesses. At that time, Victoria's eyes widened and she looked visibly shaken, placing a hand over her mouth. However, she quickly changed her tone and began to apologize. I'm sorry. I was threatened by that man. I'll give you half of the $100,000 life insurance payout if you overlook this. Excuse me? You're not the beneficiary. That can't be true. We made each other beneficiaries when we got married. I told her that, according to Richard's diary, the beneficiary had been changed from her to Daniel. Richard had set up a trust system that allowed his children to receive the benefits once they reached a certain age, regardless of their current age. That's ridiculous. It was a plan to get a large sum of money. She collapsed on the spot, crying and screaming like a child, utterly miserable. We watched her coldly in silence. Afterward, both she and her lover were arrested. Taking someone's life is a serious crime, and they are unlikely to be free for a long time. Even if they were to leave prison, no one would want anything to do with them. Currently, my grandchildren live with me. In fact, my daughter and her husband also live with us, supporting us and lovingly caring for the two children as if they were their own. Emily, who used to be quiet, has started to open up and gradually began to talk more. I am determined to stay strong and see these children's happiness through until the end.
Even if you attempt to trouble us, there's hardly any loss on your part, considering it's your funds, useless to poor people with lowly lineage. I sighed as I completed the final check. You're closing your account, right? Please, go ahead, I said with a tone that seemed mocking. Their eyes, filled with clear disdain, made me feel disgusted as they stared at us. I decided it was time to give those who judge others by their upbringing a taste of their own medicine. With that thought, I smiled. My name is Tiffany, a 29-year-old office worker. Currently, I'm living a peaceful life with my mom while working. My dad passed away from an illness when I was young. His chronic illness had worsened early. My father, who was involved in various businesses, was always busy with work, out early and back late. Even so, he treasured his family time, and I have fond memories of playing with him on his days off. Mom and I were initially shocked by Dad's death, but Mom, not wanting me to feel lonely, cherished our time together. Fortunately, when Dad fell ill, he made sure with the former CEO to secure enough funds for our livelihood. Thanks to that, I was able to go to college, and both Dad's and Mom's parents were very supportive, especially my paternal grandparents, who lived nearby, took great care of me when Mom was away at work. We still go back to both sets of grandparents for holidays like Christmas and spend time together. I am who I am today thanks to the support of many people. To give back, I went to a national university and got a job at a major company. I thought about working at the bank my dad was supposed to inherit, but I chose a career I loved. As you're being told, do what you love. I've already handed the bank over, Don't worry about it. Thanks to a fulfilling home environment and the freedom to dive into hobbies, I had no interest in romance. But now, at a mature age, many of my friends are married with kids. This led me to think about marriage, and that's when a certain encounter happened. I never imagined this meeting would lead to a major incident. "Hey, Tiffany, aren't you interested in love, huh?" That was the starting point, a question from a colleague at work. We've been close since our rookie days. You know, I have an acquaintance who's struggling to find a match. He's well-educated and handsome. You're highly educated too, Tiffany. Maybe you'd like to meet him. I've always thought it's a waste for someone as eloquent as you, Tiffany. There are even a few people in the office who are after you. She has a wide network and always shares various stories. She's living with her boyfriend, whom she met at a party, and seems very happy. She's quite concerned about my lack of romantic involvement. I had even consulted her about marriage, leading to this arrangement. A few days later, I agreed to meet a man named Yves. The rendezvous was at a cafe, and as I waited nervously, a man approached me. "Tiffany? Ah, yes, nice to meet you. You're Yves, right?" I said, feeling a bit anxious. "Yes, thank you for today." Yosef's expression was blank as he looked me over. It felt like he was sizing me up, and I was a bit taken aback. Then, taking a seat opposite me, he quickly started the conversation. "What do you do for work, Tiffany?" he inquired. "I work in sales at a company. I've always enjoyed interacting with people and making use of my opinions, which is why I chose sales. I find it fulfilling, and I love the moments when customers are happy with their purchases," I replied, trying to ease the tension. "What's the name of your company?" he asked. I told him the name of my company. Upon hearing it, Is paused for a moment, then smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile, more like one of satisfaction. "My company is quite a large enterprise with good performance. We're well trusted by our customers," he said, his tone slightly arrogant. Since he asked, I decided to return the question. "What do you do, yes?" At my question, Is snorted with pride and began to boast. "I work at Sunrise Bank as a department head. Sunrise Bank is a really big bank, you know. The work is tough, not something ordinary people can handle. But since my dad is the CEO and I'm the successor, it's different for me." I felt a stir in my chest at Yosef's words. I was expecting a normal response, but Yosef's aggressively toned words made me feel uncomfortable. Indeed, Sunrise Bank is a major bank. I knew about Sunrise Bank due to a certain incident, but I was surprised to learn that East worked there as a department head. Wow, that's impressive. Sunrise Bank is a big place, isn't it? I flattered East on purpose. I saw no need to be rude, and though I thought this would probably be our last meeting, I figured it was better to be nice. Pleased with my flattery, East continued to boast about himself. Honestly, talking to him was painful. He did listen to me occasionally, but always turned the conversation back to himself, even making outrageous comments about his lack of romantic prospects. I'm quite popular, you know, but it's always people who don't match my family background or education level that come to me. I thought the problem might be his attitude, but I had already decided not to meet him again after informing my friend. As time passed, he still looked satisfied and made a suggestion. "I'd really like to meet your parents, huh? But we just met today. That's exactly why parents' excellence is important, especially if we're going to date, right?" Inside, I screamed. I had no intention of dating him, but he seemed oblivious to my discomfort and kept pushing forward. "When are your parents in? Are you available?" "Ah, I'll have to discuss it with my mom." What about your dad?" As Yeast pressed on, I felt a growing sense of disgust, but couldn't find the strength to cut him off. My dad passed away when I was young." At my words, Yeast narrowed his eyes. Suddenly, waiting for him to speak, Yeast just said, "I see," and fell silent, pondering. "Well, send me a date that works for you later. I'll adjust my schedule." No, thank you. Should we leave then?" Before I could finish, Yeast stood up. It felt like talking to someone from a different world, despite my reluctance. I had given him my contact information and even discussed meeting our parents. His disdainful look upon hearing about my father's absence bothered me. In the end, we agreed to meet again with our parents. When I explained this to Mom, she smiled. "Riley, maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before," she said reassuringly. Maybe, but the way he spoke was weird. Well, his parents will be there, right? Just say no if it doesn't feel right. "I'll be there too," I replied, feeling guilty. "Thanks, Mom. Sorry for dragging you into this," I apologized. Mom laughed heartily. "It's okay. No need for you to feel bad. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank, so let's see how it goes." So, Is and I arranged a family meeting. At that time, I had no idea Is had planned the meeting for such a shocking purpose. On the day of the meeting, we arrived at the place Is had chosen. It was a fancy restaurant. "It's a big place, isn't it?" I remarked as we entered. "Yes, it is," Mom agreed. Inside, our table was ready, but Is hadn't arrived yet. We entered and waited, and shortly after the scheduled time, Is and his family arrived. "Sorry we're late. The traffic was terrible." "Nice to meet you. Thank you for today." Yosef's family unapologetically took their seats. Irritated but not wanting to start a fight, I initiated the family meeting. After some time, Yosef's mom, Morgan, with a sly smile, spoke up. "So, where is your father? Is he coming later, huh?" she inquired, looking around. I looked at Yes, but he just smirked dismissively and said nothing. I had already told him my dad was deceased. Morgan acted as if she didn't know, despite having agreed to meet our families. Mom quickly responded, "In my stead, my husband passed away from illness when Tiffany was young. So today, I'm here as her mother," Mom responded with a calm smile. In contrast, Morgan raised her voice in an exaggerated manner. "Oh my, Tiffany is from a single-parent family." Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. "Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated?" Ye's family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, "Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you've just met, Tiffany?" However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. "Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them." Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. "Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank, so maybe she's not quite at your level." As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. "Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you?" Her words took me aback. Even after explaining that my father had passed away from illness, her tone clearly carried malice. "Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, huh? But she graduated from a public university. That's commendable, right? Really, but still, being from a single-parent family, wouldn't dating her be complicated?" Ye's family's conversation left Mom and me utterly dumbfounded. Despite being present, they spoke so disrespectfully, mocking us as if being from a single-parent family was something bad. Such words weren't suitable for a first meeting. Angered, I retorted in a low voice, "Excuse me, but after Dad passed away, Mom raised me with great care. I owe my current life to her. And isn't it rude to speak about someone like that when you just met, Tiffany?" However, Morgan burst out laughing at my words. "Rude, isn't it? More absurd for the daughter of a single parent to think about marrying into a high-class family. I'm not really into strong-willed women. This is pointless. There's no getting through to them. Thinking this, I just stared at them in disbelief. I had high hopes since she works at a major company. Well, you'll eventually carry on Sunrise Bank. So maybe she's not quite at your level. As they hurled more insults, I felt no need to listen anymore. Trembling with anger, Mom glared at them. Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? I've heard from Tiffany about the other day. You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you? It was the first time I heard her speak so sternly. Please stop with the accusations. It was just a little teasing, right? No one feels good being mocked, and all your remarks are condescending. We have no intention of listening to this any further. Yi's family looked displeased at Mom's clear statement. Presumptuous for commoners, huh? Indeed, that may be the case. But this has made up my mind. Yi's family looked briefly surprised at Mom's words, then burst into laughter. They seemed to be thinking, what can you possibly do? Mom sighed and began to speak. Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to entrust them to people like you. Oh, really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much, right? It's probably insignificant. That's right. Even if you try to trouble us with your fun, it won't really affect us. Low-class poor people are not needed. I realized that even Mom's last attempt at reconciliation was in vain. But they continued to speak disdainfully, unaware. I sighed and made the final confirmation. We're closing our account. Okay, go ahead. Yosef's family responded with mocking tones and clearly disdainful expressions as they looked at us. I thought to myself, let's make those who judge others by their background suffer a bit. I smiled at the thought. Is that so? Then we will proceed as such. And please consider this meeting never happened, Yosef's family declared. Of course, I replied calmly, knowing we had no intention of marrying into a family with such prejudices. Well then, we will take our leave now, Mom, and I stood up. Oh, don't worry about today's bill. It's too expensive for you, they remarked. Is that so? Well then, with that, our family meeting ended. Later, I made a phone call. Weeks later, my mobile phone was flooded with calls from Yos. Of course, I had anticipated this and had no intention of answering. It was their own responsibility. I immediately blocked the number. A few days later, I received a call from Grandpa Kyle. Summoned by Kyle, Mom and I headed to Sunrise Bank in the meeting room. Yi's family, looking pale, was present. As soon as they saw us, Morgan stood up and rushed over to bow deeply. I am extremely sorry for what happened, she said. I didn't reply to Morgan's words, just smiled and began to speak. What exactly are you apologizing for? At my words, Morgan bit her lip hard, trembling with anger. That's understandable. There are too many things for which they should apologize. That's probably why she's feeling so frustrated. This whole situation started because I said we would close our account. That day, our account wasn't particularly large. Closing it wouldn't have caused much damage. But Kyle's case was different. Kyle managed the inheritance left by my dad at Sunrise Bank for our benefit. Kyle also had his own account there. If all accounts, including Kyle's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7,000 million. In other words, their disrespect decided the closure. And importantly, Kyle is the former CEO of the bank. Dad was supposed to take over the bank but passed away young, so the position went to Scott. I didn't know that Tiffany was related to the former CEO, Scott. Looking anxious, Yosef pleaded as if making an excuse. But that's no excuse. Even if they didn't know, their prejudice against our family is their own fault. You mean, if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently? Dad interjected. Hey, don't talk to Dad like that. It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandpa was the former CEO. I don't have any obligation to tell a stranger like you that. Besides, you were the one who started it and made fun of us, remember? I countered, causing Yosef to narrow his eyes in frustration. You insulted me knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would transfer the bank due to insecurity, You told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told. But it's just that it may be just that for you. But have you ever thought about the feelings of someone whose family has been insulted? Silence fell. Morgan was trembling, looking hopeless, and Scott was hanging his head. But Yosef still seemed unconvinced, his face full of dissatisfaction. Getting all high and mighty just because people talk to you. Yosef remains unrepentant. At that moment, the door to the conference room opened and Kyle appeared. Seeing Kyle, Yosef's tone grew defiant, and Morgan turned even paler. Frozen in place, only Yosef glared at me. Even after giving you a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves, Kyle said, his tone stern. It's not my fault. It's her. Watch your words. If you continue, you'll end up even more miserable. Yosef, silenced by Kyle's words, glared at me again. Then, as if resigned, he burst out, "No way. Who would think a single parent's relative was the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the family meeting just to mock us." "Yosef, be quiet." Kyle glared sternly, causing Yosef to breathe heavily. "Future CEO, huh?" Kyle then turned his gaze to Scott, who shrunk even more under Kyle's stare. "I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I know his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO." "That's ridiculous," Scott started to retort, but sat down again under Kyle's gaze. "You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Though I'm retired, the board will decide. If you have something to say it to them. Remember, we recorded the previous conversation, and this one. Don't forget that the voice recorder will serve as evidence." I took out a voice recorder in front of the three and pressed play. The recorder started playing back our conversation from the other day. "How dare you prepare something like that? It's unfair," Yosef exclaimed. "It was just a precaution, but remember, you forced me into this situation." I countered. Yosef had nothing to say in return, and their faces turned pale. "Thank you, we'll handle it from here," they said. So Mom and I left. Ultimately, Kyle didn't transfer the funds, at least not officially. Scott was removed from his CEO position, and Yosef was demoted. Seemingly unable to handle the blow to his pride, Yosef resigned voluntarily. Kyle's influence in the financial industry meant Yosef would struggle to find work in the same field again. Whether Scott knew this or not, he seemed determined to work until retirement, but Kyle said it would be tough for him both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to wield power as the CEO's wife, apparently started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle, but her character likely made it hard for her to keep a job. "I'm really sorry," I said. "It's okay. You didn't know, right?" Mom replied. "I only shared what happened with a friend who introduced me to Yosef. She just heard about him through someone else and wasn't at fault." Mom was initially concerned about being a single parent, but I'm happy now and can live thanks to the support I've received. When I told her that, she smiled and said thank you. After everything was taken care of, Kyle told us to come over to his house again sometime. I'm really grateful for Kyle's help in resolving the situation. He was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's okay. "I have some good news for you," Mom said one day. "Really? It's not about dating again, is it?" I teased. "It's a friend of my boyfriend this time. He's definitely a good guy. I'm not interested in dating right now, but I'm satisfied with my current life. I want to keep cherishing those who support me. And maybe someday I'll meet someone I really click with."
"I don't like anything about you, Mother," said my eldest son's wife. "We want to live with our family alone, so get out." I was shocked to hear these words. It reminded me of when I had to leave my own parents' home. Now, I felt angry at the idea of being kicked out of this house too. "Fine, I'll leave," I said, gathering my things to go. This was too much. I was determined never to forgive my eldest son's wife. It was time to put my plan into action. "So, my name is Sandra Clark, and I'm 61 years old this year. I'm technically retired, but I'm still lucky enough to have some work. I don't go to the office every day anymore. Sometimes I drop by and attend meetings, but mostly I work from home. My oldest son seems to think I'm not working anymore, which isn't true. I became a widow when I was in my 40s. Right now, I live with my oldest son and his wife. Our family home has been in our family for a long time. It's a bit old and needs some fixing up, but I've always loved it. That's why leaving was hard. I've never had to worry much about money. My late husband's insurance money is still mostly untouched. I've been able to live comfortably without worrying about my future. Even though it might seem like I have an easy life, there are some things that bother me. It's mostly my oldest son's wife, Jessica. She's strong-willed and we often clash. This tension didn't just start recently. It goes back to when she first told us they were getting married. I still remember the outfit she wore when she first came to meet us. She showed up in a tracksuit that looked like something she wore back in high school. She said she wanted to be real with us, but I couldn't help but find it a bit odd. It's not exactly lying, but it felt like she was trying too hard to prove something. She's also very argumentative and smart, which can be challenging. I couldn't understand why my oldest son chose her as his partner. Later, I found out that Jessica was the one who pursued him. She's bold, I'll give her that, and she's attractive too. I think my son, who's a bit naive and sheltered, fell for her charm. Even after they decided to marry, things didn't change much. To put it nicely, she's straightforward. To be blunt, sometimes she lacks common sense in how she acts. I really wanted to object to their marriage, but I reminded myself that it's what my son wanted, so I kept my peace. And now, we're facing the consequences of that decision. After my son and Jessica got married, he insisted that we all live together in our family home. I thought Jessica might disagree, but she was actually okay with the idea. It didn't take long for me to understand why. However, once we started living together, Jessica never lifted a finger to help with household chores. She left everything for me to do, cleaning, laundry, cooking, despite being a full-time housewife herself. She had quit her job when they got married. Even though I work remotely and don't have to go to the office every day, I still have less free time than Jessica. While I'm working on my computer, Jessica would make comments belittling my work, saying I'm just goofing off. At first, I brushed it off to avoid arguments, but it bothered me more and more as it kept happening. Jessica, since you have some free time, could you help out with the cleaning? I asked, noticing her lounging and watching TV. She looked at me with disgust, sighed dramatically, and replied, I don't do housework for your own good, mother. Can't you see that? It's a shame you don't appreciate my consideration. She had this strange theory where she believed if she did the housework, it would be bad for my health. According to her, seniors need to stay active, and doing chores would make me sedentary and possibly lead to dementia. So she was actually doing me a favor by letting me handle everything. Her reasoning was so bizarre it gave me a headache. Then she said something even more shocking. I agreed to live together to keep you from slacking off, mother. She said it with a half smile, leaving me speechless. I regretted agreeing to live together more and more every day. Doing all the housework while being watched by Jessica was nothing but torture. Fed up with the situation, I decided to talk to my eldest son, but it wasn't to complain about Jessica. I decided to move to an apartment where I could live alone. The current house we're in is old and has many stairs, which became difficult for me after I hurt my back last year. I talked to my son about the challenges of living here, and then I moved to an apartment. Even though it felt like Jessica pushed me out, I don't regret leaving. The new apartment is a rental. It might be a bit big for just me, but I got a room big enough for my grandchildren to stay in the future. I had the inside designed just the way I like it, and it felt like my own little castle. But my happiness didn't last long because Jessica started coming over every day and staying until late. The new apartment is really nice, huh? Maybe too big for you, Mom? Jessica said, lounging on the couch. Why don't you come back to your old home and do the chores? It's for your health and longevity. It's unbelievable that Jessica is telling me to go back to the old house and do the chores. During the day, she's so self-centered, it's overwhelming. I've already moved out. You need to take responsibility as the wife. I handle all the chores here, and my health checkups are always fine, Jessica. You don't need to worry about me. But Jessica just turned away, ignoring my words. Ignoring anything inconvenient was her usual tactic. Yet, she kept coming to my apartment every day. Just recently, she said it's too much trouble to go back home and ended up spending the night. My parents' house and this apartment are only about a 15-minute walk apart. It was my eldest son who suggested I live closer to my parents' house because he was concerned. His concern made me a little sad to leave the old house. One day, after I had been out for work-related errands, I came back in the evening to a surprise. To my shock, Jessica had let herself into my apartment. It seemed she used the spare key I had given to my son without my knowledge. Welcome back, she said, lying on the floor in front of the TV without even bothering to get up. Jessica, that spare key is for emergencies only, not for you to come in whenever I'm not home. I felt uneasy knowing she had been in my apartment while I was away. It was the first time I firmly told her so. She seemed surprised, as I usually let things slide quickly. She gave me an annoyed look, but I stood my ground. You really are a difficult mother-in-law. I can't stand that about you. Jessica started yelling at me. I can't stand anything about you, not even this apartment. We're a family, so you should leave. With that, she tried to push me out the door. It seemed Jessica couldn't bear the idea of me living in the apartment. She was upset that they were still in the old house while I was here, calling it unfair. James is paying the rent for this place, right? It wouldn't be strange for us, his family, to live here. That's what it means to live beyond your means. Jessica seemed to think my son was covering the rent for the apartment. This explained why she kept showing up here. In her mind, the apartment should have been for her family to live in. Fine, I'll leave, I said firmly, staring her down. I agreed to move out within 3 days, which seemed to surprise her. Right in front of her, I called a moving company and arranged for them to come in 2 days. As Jessica left feeling satisfied, I watched her go, already planning my next move. True to my word, I moved out. My new place was an apartment specifically designed for seniors. I decided to test it out for 2 weeks. I handed over the keys and lease documents to Jessica, asking for a change in the contract through the real estate agent to the landlord. Luckily, I've known the landlord for a long time, so they were flexible and accommodating, which was a relief. My eldest son was furious with Jessica for kicking me out. He's even considering divorce, but Jessica doesn't seem to care. In fact, she started living alone in my apartment, saying, "Well then, let's live separately." I'm amazed at how bold she is. But in 5 days, Jessica will find out the truth. While I was working from home, my phone started ringing incessantly. It was Jessica calling. I had been expecting this, so I had a recorder ready to record the conversation. I pressed the record button and answered the call. "Excuse me, Mother, what's the deal with the rent for this apartment? Why do I have to pay it?" Jessica started ranting as soon as I picked up the phone. She sounded flustered. "Well, Jessica, you're the current leaseholder, so it's only fair that you pay. Is there a problem?" I purposely kept my tone calm and relaxed to annoy Jessica. She seemed even more agitated but didn't back down. "But didn't James used to pay the rent here? We're not even divorced yet, so shouldn't James pay?" Jessica had told my eldest son about the rent issue and he advised her to call me. The truth was, my son had never paid the rent. In fact, I had been financially supporting him. After retiring, I continued working as a consultant and advisor, earning a good salary. I was actually earning more than my son. I had been secretly helping him out because Jessica tended to spend a lot. "It's just a misunderstanding, Jessica. Originally, I was the one paying the rent for that place. I never made James pay a dime." Jessica seemed shocked and caught off guard by the truth. She quickly said what she wanted to and hung up the phone. Right away, I contacted my eldest son and played him the recorded conversation. "I've been putting up with it too, but I can't take it anymore. You feel the same way, don't you?" I knew my son was exhausted from dealing with Jessica's debts. No matter how old he gets, as a parent, I can't help but want to help him out. Some might say I'm too soft, but I think it's just natural as a parent. My son replied quietly, "I'll divorce her, I'm tired too." Then follow my lead. I told him my plan and gave him instructions. First, I asked him to take a few days of paid leave starting today. Then, I told him to quietly move out his important belongings without letting Jessica know. We didn't want her to notice any moving trucks, as she might be nearby. I had instructed him to slowly move his things out during the night, keeping it discreet. The important belongings were taken to a single-family home that I had found as our new residence. This way, the plan progressed without Jessica knowing. 3 days later, Jessica called again, sounding even more flustered than before. "What? Why are you so worked up? Just like last time." I kept my tone deliberately relaxed as Jessica sounded overly anxious, almost in a state of panic. Mother, our house is up for sale. And I got a call from my parents saying that my belongings have arrived at their house. What does that mean? Jessica explained that her parents had received her belongings and our old house was now on the market. It seemed my eldest son had followed my instructions. He had sent Jessica's things to her parents' house and put our old house up for sale, leaving it empty. The landlord told me that if I can't pay the rent, I should leave. I thought I should consult with James, and when I got home, there were chains and a padlock on the gate, and I couldn't get in. There's even a for sale sign up. Jessica was almost hysterical. It must have been quite a shock for her to come home to. I've already entered into a sales contract with a realtor. We can't access that house anymore, Jessica had began, ready to express all the pent-up frustration. Firstly, I'm no longer your mother-in-law, right? Yesterday, James should have filed for divorce. You signed it, didn't you? You and I are strangers now. Yesterday, my eldest son had filed for divorce at the city office. It turns out Jessica had signed the papers a while ago. Threatening divorce seemed to be a tactic she often used. My son used to believe that Jessica would change someday. After all, she was the person he loved enough to marry. He felt trapped into giving in to her threats of divorce, he once told me. But it seems my son has finally realized the truth. He signed the divorce papers, which had always been used as leverage, and submitted them. The divorce has been officially processed. You always used to tell James that you could divorce anytime. Are you happy now that things have turned out your way, Jessica? I could sense Jessica holding her breath on the other end of the phone. She wanted to argue back, but seemed lost for words. She must have been feeling frustrated. Besides, I'm worried about you. After the divorce, how will you manage to live in that apartment without a job? Moving also costs money, and it's tough. How did you even afford it? Jessica's anger was no longer hidden. She yelled and cursed at me. She had claimed she married my son because of the inheritance he received from my late husband. However, I control all the inheritance and she can't touch a penny of it. Despite marrying to clear debts, she screamed that nothing was going well for her. Of course, I made sure my son listened to this conversation too. If it came to a divorce settlement, I planned to use the recording as evidence. I thought it was the end, so I patiently waited for Jessica to finish her tantrum. She ranted for about 15 minutes without pause. Then, in the end, she started begging me for help, crying. She confessed that she had been disowned by her family. With nowhere else to go, she pleaded for my assistance. It suddenly clicked for me. Something had felt off at the wedding, and now I understood what it was. Jessica had no place to go, no home to return to. Despite feeling a bit sorry for her, I couldn't ignore the consequences of her actions. Apologizing now won't change anything. We're strangers now. There's nothing more to discuss. Good luck with your life from here on, I said before ending the call with Jessica. I felt a sense of relief afterward. It seems Jessica caused trouble at my eldest son's workplace. He told me things escalated to the point of involving the police when he returned home. Jessica, who had been staying at the apartment without paying rent, had her keys changed by the landlord while she was out. Now, she can't even get into her own apartment. She might have tried to contact me or my son, but we had canceled our phones and got new ones with new numbers. I can only imagine the despair she felt when she realized she couldn't reach us no matter how many times she tried. We didn't give her our new address either, so she can't reach us that way. After causing a scene at my son's company, she was issued a restraining order. With no other options, it seems Jessica turned to her disowned family for help. However, when she returned home, she was met with a shocking sight. The luggage I had sent to her family's house was left out in the rain in the backyard, and she wasn't even allowed inside the house. It's likely that the unpaid rent for the apartment had been billed to her parents, adding to their anger. I heard rumors that she's currently staying in an apartment provided by an organization that supports homeless people. Without the ability to spend as she did before, she seemed stressed when I passed her on the street. I was stunned to see how much her hair had turned white and how dry her skin looked. She had changed so much. I hardly recognized Jessica at first. It made me realize just how much a change in living conditions can affect a person. I've started a new life in the house I bought with my late husband's inheritance. It's a duplex, so my son can remarry whenever he wants. For now, he joins me for dinner, but otherwise, he takes care of his own things. I've found that this distance works well for us. The money from selling my parents' home is safe for future needs. I plan to use it for my son and his future wife when they marry. And of course, I'll keep some aside for any future grandchildren. I'm thinking of creating the English garden I've always dreamed of in my new home. On days when I'm not working, I spend time in the garden, caring for the young trees and herbs. This new life, filled with hope, has become my daily routine.
On the day my mom passed away, my sister-in-law made a hurtful joke, saying I slept in and missed the funeral. She then mentioned she wouldn't be attending. It made me angry because she had convinced my sick mom to spend a lot of money on a new house, and now she was acting this way. Trying to keep calm, I warned her she'd regret it, but she just hung up. Later, at the funeral, even my usually gentle brother was furious with her. My name's Lisa. I'm 28, single, and have a good job that keeps me busy. Despite everything, I'm doing okay. Today is a day off from work, so I went back to my mom's place after a long time. I greeted her, and we had a nice chat over tea. My mom is a kind and elegant person, but she's been living alone since my dad passed away a few years ago. Both Dad and I always worried about her health because she's not very strong. Whenever I have time off, I make sure to visit Mom and spend time with her. During our chat, I asked if anything troublesome had happened lately. Just as she was about to tell me, the doorbell rang. Mom said it might be Stephanie. Stephanie is my brother's wife. They recently got married, and she's my sister-in-law. I often wonder how my quiet brother ended up with someone as talkative and pretty as her. Although I sometimes find her unexpected visits a bit annoying, I appreciate her caring about our mom. When Stephanie came in, she greeted us cheerfully. She mentioned how long it had been since we last met, and then started talking about my job in accounting. She said she's too busy with housework, and hinted that it would be nice if I got married soon too. Yeah, maybe my sister-in-law acts timid around my mom, but sometimes she makes these sneaky comments to me. I'm not sure if she's trying to be mean, but it definitely makes me feel uneasy. Looks like my sister-in-law's here too, so I'll head out, I told Mom when I said goodbye. She agreed and said we should catch up more next time before seeing me off. As I left, I couldn't help but wonder if Mom was really okay with my sister-in-law. She's not one to gossip or complain, so I worry she might be keeping her feelings inside. A few months later, Mom told me that my brother was building a fancy new house. My brother makes a good living, but he's not super rich, right? And my sister-in-law doesn't work, so how are they affording such a big house? I wondered aloud. Well, I actually helped him out with some money from your father's inheritance. Mom confessed. How much? I asked. Around $20,000, Mom replied. $20K? Mom, are you serious? I exclaimed in shock. My dad always taught my brother and me to be self-sufficient once we grew up, so I couldn't understand why Mom would give away such a large amount of money. Stephanie, your sister-in-law, kept coming over almost every week, asking for help. I just couldn't say no, especially since Andrew and Stephanie promised to take care of me when we all lived together. I felt like I had to help, Mom explained. Well, if you're sure about it, Mom, but aren't you worried you're giving too much? I asked. No, not at all. This will make things easier for you, Lisa. I'm actually excited about our new life together, Mom replied with a smile. They went ahead and built their house, and my brother, his wife, and Mom moved in together. When I visited to give them a housewarming gift, I was amazed by their luxurious house. It had a modern kitchen and bathroom, fancy interior with real wood, and a big backyard. There was no way my brother could afford all of this on his own. My sister-in-law proudly gave me a tour of the house, and when it was over, I pulled my brother aside quietly. Congratulations on the new house, Andrew. Please make sure to take good care of Mom. Thank you, Lisa. Don't worry, Stephanie will take care of Mom while I'm at work, he assured me. I felt guilty about Mom contributing money, but we're determined to ensure she's even happier from now on. It seems my brother wasn't aware that his wife had been asking Mom for money for the new house. He's a good and kind person, but sometimes he can be a bit clueless. Okay, just make sure you both take care of Mom. And you, focus on your job, I advised. Let's not talk about work. Oh, sorry, my bad, he replied. After our conversation, I gave my brother an envelope with some cash and a standing clock. This clock can help monitor health, so please put it somewhere in the living room where Mom can see it easily. Wow, this clock is really advanced, huh? But it could be helpful for Mom. And it looks stylish too. Let's place it here, my brother said, setting the clock on a shelf in the living room. I should head home now. Take care, I said. My sister-in-law was busy on the phone in another room, so I left the impressive house with my mom and brother seeing me off. 6 months had passed, and it seemed like my mom, who had been a worry, was doing well with my brother and his wife. I was able to focus on my work, thinking that these peaceful days would continue until I received the heartbreaking news of my mom's passing. When my brother came back from work, he found our mother had stopped breathing. It appeared she had passed away alone in her room. The doctors at the hospital said her existing heart condition, worsened by stress, was likely the cause of death. Mom, why now? I wish I had come home sooner. I'm so sorry. My brother and I held onto our now lifeless mother, tears streaming down our faces. My sister-in-law, Stephanie, was not there at the time. Brother, wasn't Stephanie supposed to be home? And what do they mean by overwork? I asked, feeling puzzled. No, she wasn't home. And about the overwork, I'm not sure. Stephanie took care of all the household chores, so it doesn't make sense, my brother replied, sounding confused. Feeling uneasy, I said, well, first things first, we need to arrange Mom's wake and funeral. You'll probably need to take the lead as the chief mourner, Andrew. You're right, Lisa. Can you help me? My brother asked. So my brother and I started working hard to prepare for the memorial service. It was chaotic, trying to organize everything for my mother's funeral, finding a place, making plans, reaching out to people, and more. Somehow, we managed to get through the wake, and the next day was the funeral. While my brother and I were busy with visitors, my sister-in-law just sat around doing nothing. Stephanie didn't lend a hand or show any emotion. Despite feeling increasingly frustrated with her, the hustle and bustle of the moment kept me from confronting her. Andrew, tomorrow's the funeral, and you'll be quite occupied as the chief mourner. Why don't you and Stephanie go home for a bit? I'll stay here, I suggested. Yeah, I appreciate that, Lisa. Thank you, my brother replied. After they left, I got my work laptop out in the now empty room and started working. I barely slept throughout the night. The next morning on the day of the funeral, even though it was scheduled to start at 10 a.m., I met up with my brother at 6 a.m. to get ready. We were swamped with preparations, going over the eulogy my brother had written as the chief mourner, meeting with the funeral director, and more. My brother mentioned that Stephanie would join us later for the actual funeral. And then, around 9:30 a.m., I got a call from Stephanie. Hello, Lisa. I'm calling because Andrew isn't answering his phone. Okay, and, I just woke up, overslept. I won't be able to make it to the funeral. Struggling to keep my voice steady and not let my anger show, I replied, okay, but you might regret missing it, you know? Stephanie, I don't think that's a good decision. Anyway, I understand you're busy, but try to hang in there, I said before Stephanie hung up. Hey, was that Stephanie just now? My brother approached and asked. Yeah, she overslept and said she's not coming today, I replied. What? That's unbelievable. It's our mother's funeral, my brother exclaimed. Let's just focus on the funeral, Andrew. I'll talk to you about something afterward, I said, trying to keep things calm. Somehow, we made it through the funeral together. My brother and I paid our respects to our mother's remains, but Stephanie was still nowhere to be found. What was she thinking, not showing up for her own mother-in-law's funeral? By the way, Lisa, what did you want to show me? My brother asked, trying to shift focus. Sure, Andrew. Take a look at this, I said, pulling out my laptop. What is Displayed on the screen was the living room of my brother's house. It dawned on my brother that the clock I had given him as a gift had a hidden camera installed, meant for keeping an eye on elderly folks or pets. I had given it out of concern for Mom, but since she seemed fine, I didn't want to invade anyone's privacy, so I hadn't looked at it until now. However, yesterday, I decided to check the footage from the past week. Here it is, I said, opening a few videos. My brother watched them closely, holding his breath. What the footage showed was heartbreaking. My sister-in-law was exploiting our mother, harshly assigning all the household chores and tasks to her, from cooking to laundry to cleaning. My frail mother was being forced to work to exhaustion. While Mom was busy with the housework, Stephanie would slack off and go out. In the footage, you could occasionally see Mom clutching her chest in discomfort and hesitating to call someone on her phone, only to decide against it. Mom couldn't tell us about the mistreatment she was enduring from Stephanie. She always wanted our happiness, you know, Mom. I had no idea. Please forgive me. Both my brother and I saw it. The pain of seeing our mother in such a situation was almost unbearable. Lisa, can we see the footage from the day Mom passed away? My brother asked me. I haven't checked it, but Mom passed away in her own room, so I don't think we have any recording of her, I replied, setting the recorded footage to the date our mother passed away. After finishing her morning chores, my mother was seen clutching her chest as she headed towards her room. They said she passed away around 2 p.m. The living room was empty for a while. But as we fast-forwarded the recording, Andrew spoke up, "Hey here, stop it and turn up the volume." Around noon, my sister-in-law appeared on the camera. When we turned up the volume, we could hear her voice. "Hey, mother-in-law, mother-in-law." My sister-in-law called out towards my mother's room. But when there was no response, she seemed to assume my mother wasn't there. She then sat down on the sofa and made a phone call. "Hello, thanks for being with me just now. It seems like the old lady is out and about, leaving the house chores half done. Wonder what she's up to." It sounded like she was talking to someone she had been with since morning. Hearing the harsh conversation, I couldn't help but grimace. My sister-in-law continued, "What, she's dead? That would be something. But then again, I could skip the funeral and maybe go on a trip with Daniel. I mean, opportunities like these don't come around very often." My brother and I stared in disbelief. The person on the other end of the line was my sister-in-law's lover. Wouldn't it be nice if that really happened? Then I could make up some story about domestic abuse for my husband, get a big divorce settlement, and buy this house. Then Daniel and I can live here together. My sister-in-law continued her conversation. "So, where do you want to go if we take that trip?" I'm thinking. My brother abruptly interrupted. He stopped the video, his expression changing from his usual kind and gentle demeanor to one filled with anger. "Lisa, I need your help. We're going to confront her." I nodded in agreement with my brother's words and immediately made a phone call. The next day, my brother called while I was at home. "Lisa, she's back. Can you come over?" he asked urgently. "Of course, I'm on my way," I replied, rushing over to my brother's house. As I arrived, my sister-in-law came out to greet me with a forced smile. "Well, hello there, Lisa. What brings you here on such short notice? You really should have let me know you were coming," she said, looking slightly annoyed. "Andrew called me here." "Please, come this way," my brother interjected, leading us inside the house filled with the scent of incense. We all sat down at the dining table. "What's going on, you two?" "It sounds serious," I said. "I do feel bad about missing the funeral." I addressed my sister-in-law, Stephanie, in my usual tone. "But ever since you moved in, you've been treating our mother like a servant, haven't you? And even though she was sick, you made her pay $20,000 for the new house." "Huh? What are you talking about? I did all the housework." "Are you trying to start a fight?" Stephanie retorted defensively. "Actually, everything has been recorded. I'm not actually an accountant. I'm a private investigator," I revealed. My brother was the only one who knew. I pointed to the surveillance camera embedded in the living room clock and showed her my phone. The video of my mother doing housework under my sister-in-law's command was on the screen. What? This is a violation of my privacy. What were you thinking? Delete it now. Stephanie raised her voice, clearly alarmed. I installed it. As the owner of this house, I have the right to do so. It's not a violation of privacy, my brother calmly responded. What's going on with you two? And what do you mean by private investigator? Stephanie froze, realizing something was amiss. My brother silently got on his phone, and the audio of Stephanie's phone call began to play. I might just skip the funeral and go on a trip with Daniel, and maybe make up a story about domestic abuse from my husband for a big divorce settlement. As the recording played, Stephanie's face went pale. Now this isn't what it seems. Please, hear me out, she pleaded. What's the difference? Tell me, my brother demanded. Caught off guard, Stephanie began to make awkward excuses. Well, he's just a friend. We were joking around. I didn't cheat. There's no evidence, right? But there is, I said, spreading out several pictures on the table. Images of Stephanie coming out from a nearby resort with a man, being intimate in their car, and even entering a hotel on their way back. Clear evidence of cheating. What? What's this? How did you get these? Stephanie's voice trembled. You mentioned it over the phone, didn't you? You talked about where you wanted to go on your trip and how you planned to spend the night together with him. I had someone from our company take these photos, my brother explained. How could you do such a thing during our mother's funeral? I calmly spoke. Oh, enough. What's wrong with you all? Stephanie burst out. There's no way we can stay married after this, Stephanie. We're getting a divorce, my brother declared. But I'm going to demand plenty of alimony, and you're going to have to move out of this house, Stephanie countered. Excuse me? My brother and I exchanged a glance, stunned by her audacity. I mean, when people get divorced, the wife receives alimony, right? Now, hurry up and give me my money, Stephanie demanded. Actually, that's not true. Since you cheated, you're the guilty party, and you're the one who will have to pay compensation to my brother, I intervened. What? Clearly, you're even more foolish than I thought. Pitiful, just as Lisa said. I'm going to demand alimony from you and from your lover as well, my brother added. What? And besides, it's for me to tell you to leave. Don't ever come back, Stephanie retorted, growing more agitated. No, this must be a lie. Stephanie muttered as I handed her a return suitcase and escorted her to the entrance. After closing the door, I gently patted my downcast brother's shoulder. 6 months later, my brother's divorce from Stephanie was finalized. She tried to take it to mediation, but the evidence my brother had gathered made it clear to the mediators who the guilty party was. It turned out that Stephanie had been squandering the money from their joint bank account. So my brother was able to divorce her with almost no division of assets. After that, just as he had declared, my brother claimed alimony from Stephanie and her lover. The lover, who had planned on moving in with Stephanie using the alimony from my brother, was outraged by the alimony claim and immediately broke things off with Stephanie. Having nowhere to live and being dumped by her lover, my former sister-in-law is now said to be living alone in an old apartment, working part-time. My brother went through a period of depression. He eventually sold the house, stating that he was done with marriage. Now he lives alone. Seeing my brother looking so lonely, I've been considering introducing him to a kind woman I recently met through work. She's also a divorcee, so they might be able to relate to each other easily. With those thoughts in mind, I head out and work hard again today.
My name is Lisa, and I once believed my life was perfectly in order. I held a prestigious role as the head of marketing, shared a loving relationship with my husband, Ethan, and enjoyed the comfort of financial independence. Paying our mortgage on my own filled me with pride, adding to my sense of accomplishment. Family was central to our lives, with Ethan's younger brother, Brian, and their mother, Amy, as constant presences. After losing their father years earlier, the brothers' unwavering devotion to their mother was something I deeply admired. It was heartwarming and made me appreciate Ethan's dedication even more. Amy seemed to accept me at first. During family gatherings, she would chat with me about my work, often remarking with a nod, "Marketing, huh? Sounds important." Her comments reassured me that I was valued, and I felt welcome in Ethan's close-knit family. The early years of our marriage were filled with joyful weekends, festive holiday meals, and lively game nights. I fondly remember one Thanksgiving at Amy's house, where laughter and chatter filled the air, making me feel like I truly belonged. But everything began to change during a New Year's Eve party. While refilling my wine glass in the kitchen, I overheard Amy mocking Julie, a single mother struggling to make ends meet, commenting on her inexpensive dress and implying she didn't belong. The words stung, not because they were directed at me, but because they revealed a side of Amy I hadn't seen before. What I once dismissed as harmless teasing now seemed cruel. As time went on, these snide remarks became more frequent. Amy would huddle with Ethan and Brian, whispering and laughing at others' expense. It was uncomfortable to witness, and I found myself questioning the family dynamics I had once admired. The breaking point came one Easter Sunday when Amy openly criticized a relative's financial decisions in front of everyone. Unable to hold back, I stood up and confronted her, calling out the rudeness of her remarks. The room fell silent. Amy, dripping with sarcasm, dismissed my concerns, saying I was too sensitive. I turned to Ethan for support, but he stayed quiet, his eyes avoiding mine. After that, family gatherings became unbearable. I often found myself alone, sipping my drink, while Ethan stayed by his mother's side. Occasionally, he'd glance at me with an apologetic look, but he never stood up for me. One evening, after yet another tense dinner, I confronted him. "Why can't you ever stand up to her?" I asked, my frustration spilling over. Ethan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "She's my mother, Lisa. What do you expect me to do?" "I expect you to tell her she's being cruel. I expect you to stand by me," I said firmly, but he never did. Eventually, I started avoiding family events, coming up with excuses, work emergencies, migraines, anything to escape the judgment and cold stares. Just as I thought things couldn't get more strained, life took an unexpected turn. I was pregnant. When I saw the 2 lines on the test, my hands trembled. I called for Ethan, who rushed in, concern etched on his face. When I showed him the test, his reaction, a mixture of shock and tentative relief, gave me a fleeting hope that this baby might heal the growing rift between us. The pregnancy, however, was far from easy. I suffered constant nausea and dizziness, with the looming threat of miscarriage hanging over me. My health deteriorated to the point where I had to quit my job and go on bed rest. A rare complication caused my eyesight to worsen, potentially permanently. Through it all, Ethan seemed to drift further away. He came home late, or not at all, leaving me to face these challenges alone. The day of my C-section arrived sooner than expected due to my worsening vision, which made natural birth too risky. Lying on the operating table, I was consumed by a swirl of fear and anticipation, unsure if this new chapter would bring healing or only deepen the cracks in our lives. When I asked for Ethan after the surgery, the nurse informed me he had chosen to wait outside. The procedure itself went smoothly, and hearing my son's first cries was a transcendent moment. My heart overflowed with love and awe at this new life, but the joy was short-lived. Ethan eventually appeared in the recovery room, his expression clouded with discomfort and irritation. "Lisa, we need to talk. This isn't right," he said abruptly, his words cutting through my fragile state. He criticized the necessity of my surgery, dismissing it as unnecessary, and lamented that men shouldn't be present during childbirth, as it went against some outdated norm. His words struck a painful chord, leaving me stunned. Before I could respond, he stormed out, muttering that the hospital environment was too overwhelming for him. I lay there, reeling, not just from his words, but from the realization that the man I once loved deeply was no longer the partner I needed. The weeks that followed were a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings. Ethan's presence became increasingly rare, and when he was around, his lack of support was glaring. One night, as our baby cried inconsolably, Ethan groaned from the bedroom. "Can you shut him up?" he growled. "I'm trying," I replied, exhaustion thick in my voice. "He's teething. It hurts him." Ethan's patience was non-existent. "All you do is focus on the kid. What about me? What about our sex life?" I was floored by his insensitivity, still recovering from major surgery and running on fumes. His complaints felt like a cruel reminder of how far we had drifted apart. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan's dissatisfaction only grew. One evening, while I was soothing our 7-month-old, he announced, "You need to go back to work." I stared at him, shocked. "But the baby? We'll hire a nanny." He interrupted sharply, "We can't keep living like this, we need the money." Though I wanted to argue that our son needed me, and I wasn't ready to leave him, the cold resolve in Ethan's eyes silenced me. With a heavy heart, I began job hunting. Finding work with my compromised vision was challenging, but eventually, I secured a position at a smaller company, though the pay was far less than before. When I shared the news with Ethan, his reaction was predictably dismissive. "That's it?" he scoffed. "We're paying a nanny for this?" Tears stung my eyes. "I'm doing my best, Ethan. It's not easy with my eyesight," I pleaded. "Excuses," he muttered before walking away, leaving me crushed and alone in my efforts. This became my new reality. Mornings were a frantic rush to work, guilt gnawing at me as I left my son with the nanny. My days were a struggle, navigating my job with limited vision, and my evenings were a constant battle for my son's attention amidst Ethan's growing resentment. Time blurred together, days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed since my son's birth, each one marked by the strain of work, motherhood, and an ever-widening chasm between Ethan and me. I cherished my son deeply and found immense joy in witnessing his milestones. Yet, family gatherings remained a source of stress, especially due to Amy's behavior. She would play the role of the doting grandmother when others were around, but her disinterest was unmistakable. "Come to Grandma," she cooed in a syrupy voice, arms outstretched toward my son. Yet he clung to me, turning his face away from the woman he barely knew. Amy's expression soured, and her voice grew sharp. "What have you been telling him about me?" she accused. "You're turning my grandson against me." I sighed, weary. "He just doesn't know you well, Amy. If you visited more often, don't you dare blame this on me," she snapped, cutting me off before storming out to complain to Ethan. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, my world tilted again. Holding a pregnancy test in my trembling hands, I stared at the positive result. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and uncertainty. My first pregnancy had been so fraught, my health so compromised. Could my body handle another? As I pieced together the timeline, it dawned on me that I was already well into my first trimester. The decision, it seemed, had been made without my full awareness. With shaking hands, I dialed Ethan at work. "What is it?" he asked, his tone impatient. "Ethan, I began, my voice faltering. There was a pause before he replied dismissively. "Look, Lisa, I'm busy, we'll talk later. Just don't quit your job, okay? We can't afford that." The line went dead, leaving me staring at the phone, feeling lonelier than ever. Thankfully, this pregnancy proved less arduous than my first. The morning sickness was manageable, and my vision remained stable, allowing me to continue working. I was determined to support my growing family. Yet, as my belly grew, the distance between Ethan and me seemed to grow even more. He spent increasing amounts of time at his mother's house, often returning home late. One evening, exhausted from managing our toddler and my pregnancy, I mustered the courage to ask Ethan for help. As he walked through the door, I said, "Hey, can you read him a story? I'm so tired." Ethan glanced at us, then at his watch. "Can't. I promised Mom I'd help move some furniture. Don't wait up." And with that, he was gone, leaving me alone with our son and my tears. By the 7th month of my pregnancy, Thanksgiving was upon us. I busied myself with preparations, and soon, guests began to arrive. My parents pitched in immediately, filling the house with warmth and the comforting buzz of chatter and laughter. Just before dinner, the doorbell rang again. It was Brian, Ethan's younger brother, and he wasn't alone. "Everyone, this is Christine," Brian announced, introducing his fiancée. The room's mood shifted to joyous congratulations. Amy arrived shortly after, her eyes lighting up at the sight of Christine. Throughout dinner, Amy lavished Christine with attention, peppering her with questions about her job. "A manager at a national bank? How prestigious," Amy gushed, clearly impressed. Then, in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, Amy said, "Christine here makes $220,000 a year. Now that's the kind of daughter-in-law I've always dreamed of. Smart, beautiful, successful." Her words hit me like a slap, especially when she threw a pointed look my way and added, "Unlike some people, who can only pop out babies and breed poverty." The sting of her words cut deep, but I swallowed my pain, determined not to let her see me falter. I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation. My mother, sitting beside me, bristled, ready to defend me, but I gently placed a hand on her arm, silently urging her not to escalate the situation. Amy, sensing her advantage, continued with her voice dripping in faux sweetness. You know, she said, looking around the room, why don't we continue this lovely evening at that new restaurant downtown? My treat, of course. Before I could process what was happening, Amy, Ethan, Brian, and Christine were heading out the door. Ethan didn't even glance back. The festive spirit drained from the room, and soon, one by one, the other guests began to leave, offering polite but thin excuses. Only my parents stayed behind, their presence a silent show of support, yet I declined their offers to help clean up, insisting they needed to rest. After they left, I sank onto the couch, my tears falling unchecked. The silence of the house was deafening, broken only by my sobs. My hand rested on my growing belly as I grappled with the overwhelming reality of how my life had spiraled to this point. Hours passed. The sky began to lighten when I heard the front door creak open. Ethan stumbled in, reeking of alcohol and cigarette smoke. He didn't say a word, heading straight to the bedroom without so much as a glance in my direction. Shaking, I picked up my phone and mindlessly scrolled through social media, and there it was, photos of Amy, Ethan, Brian, and Christine at an upscale nightclub. They were all smiles, the caption cutting like a knife, "Best Thanksgiving ever with my real family." As my due date approached, a mix of excitement and dread weighed heavily on me. The doctors had scheduled another C-section due to the short interval since my last. I tried to focus on the arrival of our baby, but Ethan's growing distance loomed like a dark shadow over my thoughts. One cold winter afternoon, I noticed Ethan unpacking bags full of summer clothes. Confused, I asked, "What's all this?" "Just saw a good sale," he replied casually, avoiding my gaze. "Thought I'd update my wardrobe." Something didn't sit right, but with the baby's arrival so close, I pushed my suspicions aside. I had been diligently saving to cover the mortgage, bills, and even a babysitter for our 4-year-old. Thankfully, my workplace had approved 3 months of unpaid leave, but the weight of responsibility felt heavier than ever. Then, just 5 days before my scheduled C-section, chaos erupted. I was resting when Ethan and Amy burst through the door, urgency written across their faces. Following them to our bedroom, I watched in shock as Ethan hurriedly packed the new clothes. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice rising with panic. "We're all going to Brian's wedding in Hawaii," Ethan replied curtly, tossing shirts into a suitcase. My heart pounded. "But my C-section is in 5 days. Who's going to take care of our son?" "You'll manage. You always do," Ethan said coldly, zipping up his suitcase with finality. Before I could argue further, Ethan and Amy were out the door, leaving me standing there, stunned and breathless. Reality crashed over me like a tidal wave. Frantic, I checked our joint account, and my heart sank. It was empty. Every dollar I had saved was gone. With trembling fingers, I called Ethan. He finally answered, snapping, "What?" "The money, Ethan. All our savings. Where is it?" I stammered, my voice barely steady. There was a pause before his cold laughter rang out. "We needed it for Brian's wedding gift. Don't be so greedy, Lisa." Then the line went dead. Before I could process his words, a sharp pain tore through my abdomen. Looking down, I saw a puddle forming at my feet. My water had broken. Panic gripped me as I realized the imminent danger. My previous C-section scar put me at high risk. Clutching my phone with one hand and my belly with the other, I dialed emergency services. The hospital was a blur of doctors shouting and machines beeping. Hours later, I woke to the rhythmic sound of monitors and my mother's tear-streaked face hovering over me. "Lisa," she whispered, squeezing my hand, "you're okay. The baby's okay." Slowly, the gravity of what had happened set in. I had almost lost my life, and my baby. 5 days after the emergency C-section, I was recovering faster than expected. The doctors were impressed, and I was cleared to go home. Yet during that time, Ethan didn't call, not once, not to check if I was alive, not to ask about his newborn son. That's when I knew our marriage was over. I reached out to my parents, asking if I could stay with them. They welcomed me and my boys without hesitation, providing not just a home but the emotional support I desperately needed. While they doted on their grandsons, I began resting and researching divorce lawyers, quietly gathering the necessary financial documents. A week after I left the hospital, Ethan finally called. I ignored the first 5 calls but answered on the 6th. "Where the hell are you? Why aren't you at home?" he demanded, his tone laced with anger and confusion. Calmly, I replied, "I'm at my parents' house with our sons. I've filed for divorce." His reaction was a mix of disbelief and mockery. "Divorce? Are you kidding me? After everything I've done for you?" He laughed bitterly. "Everything you've done?" I snapped. "Like abandoning me before I gave birth? Like stealing our savings?" "Oh, get over it," he scoffed. "I'll pay you back. Besides, I don't even want to see you again. You know why? Because I'm going to be rich." He rambled on about a job offer from Brian's new wife, Christine, who had promised to make him wealthy through some financial venture. "You never believed in me, Lisa," he spat. "You always held me back. Well, guess what? I'm free now. And you're just a loser who can't see potential when it's right in front of her." The divorce was swift. Ethan didn't contest much. He returned the money he had taken and was ordered to pay alimony. Since I had been solely responsible for the mortgage payments, the judge awarded me the house. The day I returned to what was now solely my home, Ethan was packing his belongings. As I entered with my toddler and newborn, he sneered. "Enjoy this dump while you can," he jeered. "I'll be in a mansion soon, swimming in cash. You'll see what you missed out on." As he left, a profound sense of relief washed over me. The house felt brighter, freer, finally rid of his shadow. A year and a half later, life had settled into a steady rhythm. I balanced work and motherhood. It wasn't always easy, but we were happy, healthy, and thriving. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, a news alert flashed on my phone. My jaw dropped as I read the headline, "Local banker exposed as fraud leaves family in ruins." Christine, the so-called financial genius, had orchestrated an elaborate scam. She had convinced Ethan, Brian, and Amy to invest in a non-existent company, even taking out massive loans to fund Brian and Christine's extravagant Hawaii wedding, the very event Ethan had abandoned me for. Christine wasn't a banker at all. The office she had shown them was a short-term rental, part of her elaborate con. She vanished with millions, leaving behind nothing but forged documents and shattered dreams. Ethan and Brian were left destitute, their debts unmanageable. Amy lost her home, her car, and even basic belongings. Through the grapevine, I learned she had taken a cashier's job, struggling to afford rent and groceries. Then my phone rang. It was Amy. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Lisa," she began timidly, her usual commanding tone gone, "we need your help. The children need their father and grandmother. You can't turn your back on family in times like this." I took a deep breath, memories flooding back, being humiliated, left alone while pregnant, my savings stolen. "Family?" I replied firmly. "You weren't concerned about family when you left me pregnant and in danger. You weren't concerned about family when you helped steal my savings. You weren't concerned about family when you belittled me." Amy tried to interrupt, but I pressed on. "I'm sorry for what you're going through, but I'm not responsible for the choices you, Ethan, and Brian made. My priority is my children, and I won't expose them to the instability you've brought upon yourselves. Please, don't contact me again." I ended the call and immediately blocked her number. As I set the phone down, a weight lifted from my shoulders. It was finally, truly over.
My name is Emma, and for most of my life, I believed that if you worked hard and treated people well, everything would turn out all right. I'd spent over a decade building a stable career in financial analysis, carefully climbing up the ranks. I lived in a modest but comfortable 2-bedroom condo in Chicago, which I'd saved for over the years. Life felt stable, and for a while, I thought I had everything I needed. But there was one thing missing. I'd always hoped to share my life with someone who truly understood and appreciated me. I wanted a partner, someone who respected my independence and ambitions. So when I met Tom, I thought I finally found that. Tom was charming and intelligent, and we connected on so many levels. We shared the same values, or so I thought, and he seemed to genuinely respect my independence. I'd been so careful in choosing who I let into my life, and Tom felt like a safe bet. I truly believed he'd be different from other men who felt threatened by my independence. After dating for a while, Tom introduced me to his family. His mother, Alice, was a retired school principal. She was 65 but looked younger, with a sharp gaze that seemed to cut through the air around her. Alice was one of those people who walked into a room and instantly took control of it. From what Tom had told me, she'd been a single mother most of his life and was fiercely proud of him. When I met her, I tried my best to make a good impression, and for a brief moment I thought I had. She was polite, but there was a certain edge to her that made me feel like I was being analyzed with every word I said. Tom and I got engaged within a year. I was thrilled, thinking this was the start of a new chapter. I remember feeling incredibly lucky that I found a man who supported my career and seemed to appreciate the life I'd built on my own. But as the wedding day approached, Alice became more present in our lives. She'd offer unsolicited advice on everything from the wedding colors to the guest list, often implying that her way of doing things was simply better. Tom would shrug it off, saying it was just her personality, but something about her constant interference gnawed at me. On our wedding day, as I walked down the aisle, I caught Alice's eyes watching me. There was something unsettling in her expression, a sort of critical judgment I couldn't shake, but I brushed it off, telling myself I was just nervous. After all, this was the happiest day of my life, right? After we got married, Tom and I decided to move into my condo temporarily, planning to buy a larger home together. It felt exciting to have a shared dream. But that's when Alice started showing up, often without notice. She'd comment on my choice of decor, my cooking, or even the layout of the condo. At first, I brushed it off, trying to keep the peace. Maybe she was just trying to help, I told myself. One evening, Tom and I were having dinner when Alice showed up with a bottle of wine and a strange suggestion. "Why don't you two move into a house closer to me?" she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "That way, I can help out more, especially once the grandkids come along." I felt uneasy, but Tom seemed to like the idea. He assured me it was just temporary, that it would be nice to have some help nearby, and I reluctantly agreed to start looking at homes in her neighborhood. We found a beautiful, spacious house that was, admittedly, closer to Alice's than I would have liked. But Tom was thrilled, so I told myself it would be worth it. We moved in, and for a while, things seemed all right. But then Alice began asserting herself even more. She dropped by frequently, often with bags of groceries or other things she thought we needed, and give unsolicited advice on everything. She'd rearrange the kitchen cupboards, comment on my wardrobe choices, and even rearrange our living room furniture while I was at work. When I mentioned this to Tom, he'd just laugh, saying, "You know how moms are." Months passed, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable in my own home. Then, one evening, I got news that would change everything. I was pregnant. I was overjoyed. I thought this would bring our family closer and that perhaps Alice's involvement would now have a purpose. But when we shared the news with her, her reaction was strange. Instead of excitement, she looked at me with a critical gaze and said, "Well, I hope you're ready for the responsibility. It's not just about you anymore." As my pregnancy progressed, Alice's helpfulness turned into control. She began coming over almost daily, reorganizing things, making lists of what a proper mother should do, and offering her expert advice on everything. She'd question what I ate, comment on my prenatal appointments, and make snide remarks about my choices. I began feeling like a guest in my own life. Things reached a breaking point one afternoon. I came home to find Alice going through my personal papers in our bedroom. When I confronted her, she calmly explained that she was just checking to make sure everything was organized for the baby. My privacy had been violated and I felt furious. I tried talking to Tom, but he brushed it off saying, "She just wants to help." I was heartbroken. The man I married was supposed to support me, but it felt like he was choosing his mother over me. I felt isolated and began questioning my entire relationship. One night, just as I was entering my third trimester, I came home from a long day at work. The house was dark, which was unusual because Tom was usually home by then. I tried the door, but it was locked. After knocking, Alice opened it, her expression cold and unwelcoming. "Emma," she said, "we need to talk." She led me into the living room, where Tom was sitting, looking down, avoiding my gaze. My heart pounded as I sat across from them, feeling a sense of dread. Alice looked at me with a steely expression and said, "We believe it's best if you transfer ownership of the house to Tom. It's for the security of the family, after all. You'll be focusing on the baby soon, and this way, Tom will be able to handle everything." I was stunned. "This is our home," I said, my voice shaking. "I've invested just as much as Tom has. This is supposed to be a partnership." But Alice was relentless. She looked at me with an icy gaze and said, "If you truly cared about this family, you'd do what's best for it. Holding onto the house in your name shows a lack of trust." She went on, implying that I was selfish for not prioritizing Tom's security. Tom remained silent, his eyes on the floor. I felt a sense of betrayal that I couldn't put into words. This was supposed to be the man I loved, the man that promised to be my partner. And yet, here he was, letting his mother push me around. I told them both that I needed time to think and went to bed, feeling alone and heartbroken. The next morning, things got even worse. As I was getting ready for work, Alice cornered me, again pressing the issue of the house. I firmly told her that I wouldn't be signing anything over and that we'd bought the house as partners. She glared at me, a look that sent a chill down my spine. "You're making a big mistake, Emma," she said, her voice low and dangerous. That night, I came home to find my belongings packed in boxes. Alice stood there, smugly informing me that Tom had agreed I should leave until I was ready to put the family first. I couldn't believe it. They were throwing me out of my own home, the place I'd worked so hard to build with Tom. I was devastated, but I knew I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. I spent the next few days staying with a close friend, trying to make sense of everything. I wanted to cry, but more than that, I felt anger building inside me. How had I let myself get so trapped? But as the initial shock wore off, I began to feel a new sense of clarity. I realized that I had to take control of my life. I wasn't going to let Alice or anyone else manipulate me. With the help of my friend Leah, who was also a lawyer, I started gathering evidence of Alice's behavior and Tom's complicity. I documented every instance of manipulation and harassment, determined to protect what was mine. Leah helped me file for divorce, and we prepared for the court battle that lay ahead. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom with Leah by my side. Tom and Alice were there, both looking smug, as if they'd already won. But I was determined to fight for myself and my future. As Leah presented our case, detailing the emotional abuse and manipulation I'd endured, I watched the judge's expression shift from neutral to one of concern. When it was my turn to speak, I recounted everything I'd been through, describing how Alice had tried to control every aspect of my life, and how Tom had chosen his mother over me. I told the court that I was standing up not just for myself, but for every person who had ever been manipulated or controlled by someone else. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor. I was awarded full ownership of the house and a significant portion of our shared assets. Tom and Alice were left stunned, their smug expressions replaced by shock and disbelief. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I had taken back control of my life, and I knew I'd never let anyone make me feel powerless again. This experience had been painful, but it had also made me stronger. And as I looked ahead, I felt ready to face whatever challenges life might bring my way.
Everyone aspires to be the best at something, but when this confidence transforms into taking others for granted, the universe might deliver a lesson. Understanding that there's always someone better out there is the key to humility, which is what truly defines the strongest individuals. My name is Mina, and I've been married to my husband Thomas for 2 years. When we decided to tie the knot, Thomas warned me about his troublesome sister, suggesting she might become a burden. As an only child, the prospect of having a sister excited me. But Thomas's words also sparked anxiety and curiosity about the kind of trouble she could bring. Now, 2 years into our marriage, I fully comprehend and have experienced what Thomas meant. I was born into a relatively wealthy family where my father runs a mid-sized trading company. He is well-informed and progressive in his thinking. My parents always respected my decisions, creating an environment where I could freely explore my interests. The 2008 Lehman Brothers collapse, when I was just an 11-year-old elementary school student, intrigued me. Witnessing the significant impact it had on the world and Japan, I became fascinated by how a disruption in the flow of funds could cause a global panic. This sparked my interest in researching financial circulation. Naturally curious and apparently quite intelligent, my parents had me take an IQ test, and the results exceeded the normal range. As I delved into this newfound interest, many aspects became clear, but my curiosity never waned throughout middle and high school. Continuing my exploration of this topic, I pursued a major in college that allowed me to deepen my understanding. As I delved further, my eagerness to apply my knowledge led me to venture into day trading, encouraged by my professor, who highlighted day trading as an excellent way to experience capital flow firsthand. I embraced the challenge, aware of the need for careful management to avoid debt. My research efforts were extensive as I identified statistically favorable stocks for day trading. Armed with a modest sum from all the allowances I had saved up, I engaged in buying and selling the same stock within the same day, with the goal of capitalizing on quick results. My predictions proved accurate, and though the initial increase was modest, I steadily grew my funds by repeating this process and gradually increasing my investment. In a year, I managed to amplify the initial amount by more than 50 times. While the sum may not have been significant on a larger scale, my primary concern wasn't about the magnitude of the achievement. What mattered most to me was whether the answers I had derived from my research were correct. During my university seminar, I encountered a student named Thomas, known for his analytical skills. Our shared perspectives on various topics drew us close, and after graduation, despite my initial plan to join my father's company, Thomas proposed an alternative path. He identified a job at a foreign investment firm, a proposition he presented on the day of our graduation ceremony. Following a celebration, Thomas confessed his feelings, and without hesitation, I said yes. His intelligence had always been a source of comfort, and his understanding nature made me feel at ease. As we both embarked on new journeys, gaining experience, our relationship continued to strengthen. Inspired by the concept of trade at my father's company, I dedicated myself to researching foreign companies to gain an advantage in negotiations and established a robust foundation for our deals. Thomas, with his inherent analytical skills, excelled in identifying profitable investment opportunities, earning high praise within his company. Despite our busy schedules, we maintained our connection through dates that provided refreshing breaks before diving back into our respective work. Over the 5 years of our relationship, we became indispensable to each other, evolving into a reliable support system. Deeply immersed in our exciting careers, we decided it was the right time to take the next step. Thomas proposed, expressing his desire to spend the rest of his life with me. Without hesitation, I accepted his proposal, eager to begin our life together. However, when it was time for a family meeting, Thomas disclosed something important about his sister, Alice. According to Thomas, Alice, his sister 2 years younger, was known for being challenging. He cautioned that she might cause some discomfort or inconvenience. Alice, exceptionally bright from a young age, developed a competitive spirit, looking down on others, including Thomas, whom she considered inferior. Even though Thomas was regarded as a prodigy, Alice claimed superiority, joining a rival investment and consulting firm to compete with him in her career. Thomas was worried that his engagement might affect Alice's pride, as she always sought to prove herself superior. Having no close friends and seemingly without a significant other, Alice appeared to harbor insecurities, masked by a brave face. Thomas was concerned about how she might react, fearing that she would intensify her efforts to demonstrate her strength in the face of our engagement. Attempting to reassure Thomas with a light-hearted "it's okay" proved ineffective, as his worry seemed unending. This only heightened my curiosity about his intense sister, Alice. Finally meeting her at a family gathering, her sharp, intelligent beauty was unmistakable, though a certain coldness lingered. Whether that was intrinsic to her nature or a result of my preconceived notions, I couldn't discern. Thomas's parents, in contrast, were kind and humorous, putting me at ease about getting along with them. However, beyond the initial greeting, Alice remained silent, merely eating her meal while scrutinizing me as if assessing my worth. After the meeting, as everyone was leaving, Alice pulled me aside. Curious about the person I would be, she expressed disappointment, dismissing me as just a girl who secured a job at her parents' company and likely slacking off. She asserted her financial prowess, claiming to move large amounts of money and make significant profits, placing herself on a level far superior to mine. According to Alice, Thomas settling for someone like me was disappointing, and she concluded by stating that today's gain was realizing how much I fell short of her standards. Stunned and unsure how to respond, Alice left the room, leaving me there. Thomas returned, noticing I hadn't left with Alice. Concerned, he asked if something had happened. In response to Alice's jab, I laughed it off, assuring Thomas that it was just a minor comment. Thomas apologized for his sister's rudeness, but I reassured him that I wasn't bothered. It didn't hurt, but I couldn't help but wonder what would happen the next time we met, particularly at the wedding. Strangely, I found myself looking forward to it, anticipating the interesting dynamics that might unfold. Surprised by my response, Thomas and I went on to have a grand wedding attended by family, friends, and colleagues from both sides. We pledged our eternal love and reveled in the joyous occasion, but Alice appeared grumpy and irritated right from the start. Thomas had mentioned that Alice had neither friends nor a romantic partner, so I could somewhat understand her feelings, finding it slightly amusing. During a break for a wardrobe change, as I waited for the staff to assist me, Alice entered seemingly without reason. She remarked that my happiness was only for the day and predicted that, as a plain woman, I wouldn't get the spotlight after the wedding, insinuating that I would just leech off Thomas' earnings. Unfazed, I couldn't comprehend how anyone could be satisfied with that. She declared her intentions to climb even higher on her own and find someone better than Thomas for an even grander wedding. With that rapid-fire monologue, a self-satisfied Alice left without giving me a chance to respond. As the staff walked in just after Alice's departure, I burst into laughter at the timing. Apologizing to the puzzled staff, I started changing, realizing that Alice knew how to keep things interesting. Since the wedding, I had no contact with her. I anticipated seeing her again, perhaps at Christmas when visiting my in-laws, but an unexpected connection with Alice arose sooner than expected. My father decided to seek external consulting for asset preservation and expansion at his company. Although I offered to handle it, he insisted on bringing in outside expertise, choosing a specific firm. Upon hearing the familiar name of the consulting firm during negotiations at my father's company, a sense of recognition washed over me, but I couldn't immediately place it. To my surprise, Alice was among the representatives of the firm, and the realization dawned that it was her company. We exchanged surprised glances, but silently agreed to act as if we were meeting for the first time, keeping our sister-in-law relationship a secret from the other team members. When I discussed the situation with Thomas at home, he already knew about it, expressing frustration. He suggested I step away from the project, but I found the situation amusing and laughed it off. Despite my amusement, I had to maintain professionalism during the negotiations. I pointed out flaws and inadequacies in their proposals, supported by logical reasoning that unsettled them. Alice tried to counter with past examples and mathematical evidence, but my responses exposed their weak points, leaving them silent. The meeting ended in my favor, with the other team agreeing to come up with a second proposal for the next meeting. As I relaxed with coffee after they left, I received a phone call meant for me. Answering the phone, it was Alice. She acknowledged my success, but declared that someone as excellent as her couldn't be bested by me. With a parting shot about not needing guidance from someone like me, she hung up. Bursting into laughter, I held the phone, drawing curious glances from nearby colleagues. From that point on, I took full control of the meetings, with their team often scrambling to respond to my points. Alice attempted comebacks but consistently fell short, her frustration visible. When I shared this with Thomas, he revealed that Alice had never been outdone by anyone before. Additionally, he mentioned that Alice had recently faced rejection from a guy she liked, compounding her irritation. I couldn't help but let out a surprised "huh" and stifle my laughter as a consulting project finally concluded successfully. the opposing team leader thanked us, expressing that they had learned a lot. And as everyone dispersed, Alice and I found ourselves alone. Alice, however, was not satisfied with the outcome. "I'm not satisfied with how things went. I'll make sure to get the better of you next time. Just so you know, I am more excellent. I even bought a tower mansion at my age. Only someone as outstanding as me could afford a brand new tower mansion," Alice declared, emphasizing her success as an investor. With that statement, Alice left, and Thomas later confirmed that what she said was true. Alice had indeed found success as an investor and recently bought a tower mansion to live on her own. While acknowledging her undeniable talent and the achievement within her reach, I genuinely wanted to congratulate her. A few days later, on the weekend, I had some business at a tower mansion. As I stopped at a certain mid-level floor, a door opened, and a resident stepped out. The resident and I locked eyes and both exclaimed in surprise. It was Alice. "Why are you here? If you're not invited to the party, did you come to clean?" I questioned. It seemed that today was the day of Alice's celebrity home party, as she had mentioned. "Not at all. I'm here to deliver something to an acquaintance on this floor." "You have an acquaintance here, and you came down from where?" Alice replied. "Well, my home is on the top floor of this mansion. Naturally, I had to come down." I countered, reminding her that she and Thomas lived in a single-story house because Thomas couldn't handle heights. Alice revealed that the tower mansion was her office and workshop. As we argued loudly in the hallway, a voice behind us asked, "Alice, what's going on?" Alice turned and said, "Sorry, Senior." The woman who had spoken and 3 other women looked at us with concern. "I apologize for not greeting you downstairs. I was just dealing with..." Alice seemed at a loss for words. The woman Alice called Senior looked at me, searching her memory, and exclaimed in surprise, "Aren't you Maya?" Alice was visibly confused. The Senior explained, "Don't you know? This is Mrs. Mia, our new external board director starting this month. She's also known as the investment goddess whom Alice admires." Alice was speechless at this unexpected revelation, and the Senior continued, "Also, she owns a significant share of your company, which made her a board director." Alice was overwhelmed by this unexpected turn of events. The Senior added, "Alice, while extremely talented, has a poor reputation regarding teamwork and attitude towards colleagues. If she can't improve, she can't continue working in her current role." Alice was already knocked out by the harsh reality, kneeling and collapsed on the floor. Later, Thomas told me that Alice, once a fierce wolf, had become a small dog. It seemed she finally understood that there's always someone above her. Reflecting on my previous attitude, I felt a bit guilty for finding it all so amusing. Alice has become a lesson for me to never underestimate anyone and to treat others with respect. Thomas apologized for not being more involved in these events, but it's not his responsibility at all. His concern showed his good nature, and I love him all the more for it. My current hope is to start a family with Thomas soon. I can't wait to enjoy life as a family of 3. If Alice changes her mindset and broadens her perspective, she'll surely find friends and a partner soon. One night, I had a dream of a family of 3. And by the end of next year, we'll be a family of 5, triplets from the Cabbage Patch. I woke up sweating but couldn't help laughing at the prospect.
One day, when I got home, I couldn't find my husband anywhere. He had left without telling me, and I couldn't find any clues about where he went. A few days later, I discovered that he and my sister had run away together to get married. That was 12 years ago. Recently, he called me and said he was coming back home with my sister, his wife now, and that I should leave his parents' house. He was upset that I was living there. It's been 12 years since they ran away, and it seems like he wants to make my sister his wife officially now that things have calmed down. But they don't know. They don't realize how much our family, including me, has changed since then. My name is Melanie Miller, and I'm 27 years old. I studied web design and worked at a company where I met my husband Shane. Shane is a friendly guy who works in sales. We fell in love quickly and got married after a year of dating. After we got married, we moved in with his parents. I quit my job at the company and started working as a freelance web designer from home. I wanted to take care of our home and support my husband's lifestyle. At first, it was hard for me to find a steady job, so my income wasn't always reliable. But now things had changed. I was able to find work easily and make a steady income. I could work at my own pace and prioritize my family. I cherished the time I spent with my husband and his family in the mornings, evenings, and before bed. Life felt really good. But I started to notice a change in my husband's behavior. It began when I started making twice as much money as I did at my previous job just 2 months earlier. I was thrilled to have reached and exceeded my old salary. I couldn't wait to tell my husband when he got home from work. Shane, guess what? Last month, I made twice as much as I used to at my old job. What? Seriously? Your old job paid pretty well, didn't it? Yeah, but I've been wanting more. I finally did it. Yeah, sure, that's great. You want me to throw you a party? My husband's response was unexpectedly sarcastic and negative. I couldn't understand why he was acting that way, so I asked, Shane, are you upset with me about something? Did I do something wrong? I thought you'd be happy for me. Why should I be happy? My salary didn't increase. Well, yes, but can't you just be happy for me, your wife? Really? I'm not like you. I'm just not naturally happy. Shane. After that argument, my husband started to withdraw more and more each day. Our talks became less frequent until I was the only one saying good morning and good night. Even though we had only been married for a year, it felt like we were far from happy. My in-laws, who we lived with, could sense the tension but never said anything. 2 months passed and nothing changed. We ate together in silence, and he always controlled the TV. When I was watching something, he would eat all the food I bought without asking. Whenever I tried to talk to him about it, he would argue, so I stopped bringing it up. One day, while I was cleaning the house, my mother-in-law approached me looking concerned. Melanie, how are you feeling? Are you all right? What do you mean, am I all right? Well, when you and Shane first got married, you used to go out and have a good time together. But lately, it seems like you don't do that much anymore, and you hardly talk. Yeah, but we've only been married for a year, I replied, trying to brush off her concern. I forced a smile to reassure her, but she could tell it wasn't genuine. She looked at me seriously. If you don't want to talk about it, that's okay, but I worry about you. Lately, it seems like you've been feeling down. Well, I'm not pretending to be okay. Your father has noticed it too. We're just concerned that you might be overwhelming yourself. Oh, Mom. I couldn't deny that my husband's discomfort with my higher income might have been partly my fault. But at the same time, I felt alone in my achievement. When my mother finally acknowledged the pain I was feeling, it brought tears to my eyes. So I decided to open up to her completely. After hearing everything I had to say, she started to comfort me and said, I'm so sorry. He's just not mature enough to be genuinely happy for your success. No, it's my fault. I was selfish to expect him to be genuinely happy for me. But you shouldn't have to deal with this alone in a marriage, Melanie. Keeping your feelings bottled up will only make things worse. I don't think it could get any worse. All right, so you and Shane really need to have a serious conversation about this. Can you do that? Yes, I can. Thank you for confiding in me, honey. She smiled warmly at me. Of course. Then she gave me a comforting pat on the head. My in-laws love me like their own daughter. They've been my support. Taking my mother-in-law's advice to heart, I decided to have a serious talk with my husband. That night, I stayed up late, waiting for him to come home. But as the hours passed, there was no sign of him. He usually got home by 10 at the latest, but it was already past 11, and he still hadn't returned. Why are you taking so long? I texted him, but he didn't respond. I started to worry that something might be wrong. I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up, and the phone just kept ringing. So I waited anxiously. Finally, around midnight, he walked in. I've been trying to reach you, I began, but he just sighed loudly and looked annoyed. What's going on? Why are you still up? Well, I wanted to talk to you about something important today. About what? He replied, sounding annoyed. I think our issues started because of my new salary, right? I should have maybe kept that to myself. I know it might have hurt your pride." As soon as I said that, I felt a shiver down my spine. He was standing there, looking cold and distant. I was scared stiff. He responded with anger. "There's nothing to talk about, and it's pathetic that you're waiting up for me. I'm just trying to make things better between us, Shane. That's the problem. I obviously made a mistake in choosing the right partner. No, I'm exhausted from working overtime. You don't have any right to speak, considering you just stay home all day." My husband stormed past me and headed upstairs to our room. I couldn't bring myself to move until I was sure he was upstairs. Why was he talking to me like that? All I wanted was a normal married life. My mother-in-law had encouraged me to talk to him, but it didn't solve anything. After his attitude, I didn't want to push for another conversation. It felt like he completely ignored me as a person, and it left me feeling bitter. 2 more months passed and still we didn't talk. The days seemed endless, slipping by in a blur. Then, one day, I came home to find my husband gone. I went into his room and something felt off. Huh? Shane's room is never this tidy. Shane isn't exactly known for being neat, but his room was strangely clean. His clothes and suitcase were gone. It hit me then, he'd moved out. I tried calling my in-laws, but their phone was either off or disconnected. Just as I was panicking, my sister, Mimi, called me. "Hi sis, it's been a while." "Mimi, I can't talk right now." "Is he? Your husband isn't there, is he?" "What? How did you know?" "Something's not right," I said, feeling a sense of unease. "I'm with your husband right now." "What? What do you mean?" "Well, I happened to be at the bar and I ran into him there. We had a drink and he mentioned that you two weren't really getting along." "Mimi, no, you can't be serious." "I am. I'm dating him now and we're planning to get married, so don't try to stop me." "Going away? That's ridiculous. Bring Shane back home right now." "I'm sorry, I can't. I've actually had feelings for him for a while now, and he's tall and handsome. I'm taking him." Then she hung up. I tried calling her back many times, but she never answered. Instead, she sent me pictures. There were dozens of photos of them together, going on dates, smiling. It was really hard for me to see. A few days later, I received the completed divorce papers signed by Shane. When I called his workplace, they told me he had already quit. I knew I couldn't deal with this on my own anymore. I decided to tell my parents and in-laws about what was happening and ask for their support. So Shane and Mimi are together now. He left his job and wants me to sign the divorce papers, I explained. There was a stunned silence. Then my father-in-law spoke up after a moment. "Melanie, I'm truly sorry for our son's foolishness. You don't have to forgive us, and you don't owe us anything." "Oh, Father, I can't forgive your sister either. You're like a daughter to me." "I can't forgive them for hurting my precious daughter," everyone echoed his sentiment. In that moment, our feelings towards Shane and Mimi changed completely. My in-laws were already considering moving to a new house, and after this they said, "We want nothing to do with our son anymore." And they moved without telling him. My parents also decided to cut ties with my sister. "If she ever comes back, we'll act like we don't know her. Someone who would betray their own sister like that isn't our daughter," they said. So I decided to go back home to my parents. I asked for alimony from Shane as part of the divorce agreement. He replied, "You'll get it when I get my divorce." Eventually, I received several million yen in alimony along with a message, "Divorce me." Once the divorce was finalized, I cut all ties with Shane and Mimi. It's been 12 years since then, and a lot has changed. My in-laws demolished the house we lived in and sold the land. I've become more successful as a web designer, and my income has grown significantly. Thanks to this, I can travel often with my parents and live a fulfilling life. Today, while I was working, I got a call. Without checking the caller ID, I answered, thinking it was a client. But instantly, it brought back unpleasant memories. "It's been a while, Melanie. How have you been?" Shane's voice echoed. "I knew you recognized your ex-husband's voice," he chuckled. "He's still spouting nonsense like before. What do you want? After 12 years, now you want to talk?" I could hear him chuckle. "No, you're in my house. Leave within the next 10 minutes. "What? What are you talking about? We're facing some financial trouble anyway. I'm heading there now. I'm bringing my wife home to our house. You need to leave my parents' house now." It seems he still believes I'm living with his parents. He thinks that after 12 years, things have settled down and they'll finally be accepted. In the background, I hear my sister saying, "That's right, get out of there." But they really have no idea. Do they really think that just because it's been 12 years, everything is forgiven? The world isn't that forgiving, and I won't make it easy for them. But I took a deep breath and replied, "If you want to go home, go ahead. But I'm not at your parents' house anymore." "Oh really? Did my dad kick you out?" "How clueless can you be? Your parents' house is gone, Shane." "Huh? What do you mean it's gone?" Shane's voice started shaking with anxiety. At that moment, he arrived where the house used to stand. He screamed, "What the hell?" And I could hear the pain in his voice. I continued, "As soon as you ran away, we cut ties with both of you. Your parents moved out, and my parents completely disowned the woman you're with. There's nowhere for you to come back to." "Are you serious? How is this even possible?" "Believe it or not, it's up to you, but neither your parents nor mine consider you family anymore. You've proven you're not worthy since you both destroy people's lives." That's awful. But who's to blame for ruining your family? Don't ever call me again. I won't let you ruin my life any more than you already have. With that, I hung up and blocked their number. This time, I cut the last tie. After their failed attempt to go to his parents' house, they tried to come to mine, but my parents have already disowned her. My sister was crying loudly, but my parents just asked, "Who are you?" and ignored them at the gate. Then they both got down on their knees, begging, "Please forgive us. We have nowhere to go, please." Shane was pleading too. "I'm begging you, my parents' house is gone. We have nowhere to go." "Shut up, we don't care. You're not family anymore," my parents said as they sprinkled salt on the front door. "No please wait, no please, I'm begging you," my father-in-law pleaded. "You don't get to call me that. Get out of here." They were so persistent that my father ended up sprinkling salt on them, and my mother called the cops for trespassing. They haven't been seen since. Last I heard, they were jobless, homeless, and asking their friends for money. But word got around about them, and no one was willing to help. And even if they returned to their hometown, they'd face the same fate. But they brought it on themselves. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. My parents and I will never see them again, and they'll spend the rest of their lives regretting their choices.